Chapter 1206 had already achieved the initial purpose of establishing the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. Using the unique method of the Divine Era Tower, Ein gathered a large number of underage girls and awakened the sacred silver dragon, Yun Shi, from its slumber. The Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order had successfully achieved its goal. However, during this process, Ein discovered that the power of the Great Lord Silver Dragon was even stronger than she had imagined. Even the dragon eggs left behind by the awakened Su possessed a special ability to enhance the human bloodline of this world through the immense dragon's spiritual energy. For a world experiencing a decline in the period of magic tide, this was like a cheat code. In less than a month, Saramanda, Heidi, and Miras all successfully advanced to the hero rank. Even Ein herself awakened a mysterious occupation never before seen in Sia's history, the Silver Star Warlock. The noble families who had sent their daughters had initially treated them as hostages for the most powerful nuclear explosion queen on the continent. Now, the nobles of Sia Kingdom had gone crazy and wanted to send their daughters, even their youngest daughters, to the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. All the inns near the Divine Era Tower were bursting with people. Now joining the selection of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order, you have to wait in line. The Faceless God defeated the Black Iron Giant, Emerald Sea Dragon Beast, Miras, Saramanda, and Heidi one by one, and the reputation of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order soared. After more than 1,000 members were accepted in the first phase, recruitment for the second and third phases is now in full swing under Ein's guidance. Since the elite members of the first phase have already completed the epic task of hatching dragon eggs, the recruitment for the second and third phases of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order has slightly relaxed its requirements. After all, pure and beautiful flowers under the age of 18 are always limited. Considering that the members who joined the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order in the first phase will naturally grow up, the age requirements will be completely relaxed starting from the fourth phase. Women over 20 years old, or even older, can also join. Of course, the requirement of purity will not change. After all, this is an exclusive knight order prepared for the great and sacred Lord Silver Dragon. The ultimate goal is to become the strongest organization in Sia's world, spanning the stars and seas. In light of this, Saramanda, Miras, and Heidi all stated that there are still many outstanding adult women in their clans who are qualified to join the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. Representatives of the Dwarf tribe and other Leviathan factions also expressed that there are many members in their clans who meet the requirements of the first phase but have not come to join the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. With a grand gesture, Ein said, "Come all, the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order, with the goal of spanning the stars and seas, will never have enough members." Compared to the vast galaxy where Lord Silver Dragon resides, the elite members of Sia's world's Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order are simply not worth mentioning. In order to secure the future of Sia's world, I decided to expand the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order by any means necessary. Kaka and Nini ran to join their original team because they received hints from Ein and proudly displayed the newly crafted exclusive weapon on their backs. Within the entire Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order, there are only a few knights who have been supplied with weapons of this caliber. It is evident how highly Ein values the Moon Blade Rangers from the wilderness. The fourth phase. Your Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order has quite the ambition, Kallian said as he pressed down his racing heart, put on his eye mask again, and his cheeks felt slightly warm. At present, she is only a small half-step away from reaching hero-ranked status, and breaking through at any time is not a problem if she is willing. 100% advancement of the Berserker bloodline is the most powerful path of advancement that she knows as a wilderness bride. However, now she doesn't think so anymore. Her sister, the representative from the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order, has already shown her a path that surpasses the awakening of the 100% bloodline. If she didn't know about this road before, she would have easily reached the pinnacle of the Berserker's path and completed her advancement without hesitation. But now that she knows about the existence of this road, she will not be satisfied with her current path of advancement. The wilderness brides have never been afraid of danger. The wild warrior blood flowing through their bodies makes them choose not to settle for an ordinary life of marriage and children, even if it means dying in the harsh wilderness. Either they overcome the harsh wilderness and prove themselves to be the chosen ones favored by the wilderness, or they silently disappear into the wilderness. No wilderness bride lives an ordinary life. From the moment they awaken the wild warrior blood within them, they are destined to be extraordinary. Even this cemetery is not our target. What we want is greater. Kaka, unusually, revealed the secret of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. This secret can be considered as a secret that all the elite members of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order share. Is there a greater goal than this underground cemetery? If it's you, no. If it's us. Kalian's eyes gradually brightened. The unique connection between sisters allowed Kaka to convey the great ambitions of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order to her sister without saying much. I joined. Kalian patted Kaka's shoulder, and the two sisters looked up at the sky together. A goal greater than the underground cemetery, which had already conquered the entire world of Sia, doesn't exist on Earth. So, what is it? It is that starry sky that makes the small and humble dwarves and the immense and invincible dragons of the Sia continent look up with longing and obsession. If we set this as our goal, even the underground cemetery, which seems to have conquered the world, becomes insignificant. Welcome, sister. Having completed Ain's recruiting task, Kaka rarely curved her lips into a slight smile, and the icy beauty of the wilderness bride group laughed. On the other side, representing the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order, Nini, who is lively and good at singing and dancing, enthusiastically describes the wonderful days in the Order to her companions. You have no idea how well we eat in the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. Do you know about bread? Queen Ain and Princess Adley always bring various delicious bread. I swear in the name of my tribe, there is nothing tastier than that in the whole world. Especially those golden, soft and flaky bread, eating them feels like being in heaven, making your whole body weak. Growl. The wilderness rangers surrounding Nini couldn't help but make beautiful sounds from their throats. Chapter 1207 Nini, representing the wilderness bride group, is similar to Kaka. The presence of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order can also be seen in several other countries and even teams from different continents. South Continent, a legion of heavily armored war elephants. Several girls with slightly dark skin confidently stood in front of a group of gigantic war elephants that they had never dared to hope to ride in their entire lives. These massive war elephants, towering over 3 people in height and resembling small mountains, are the most terrifying heavy armored units in the South Continent, and possibly in the entire world of Sia. With a weight of over 10 tons and armor close to a ton, only fearsome giants like the mammoth war elephants can bear such heavy gear. This legion of heavy armored war elephants can be considered the pride of the entire South Continent civilization, one of the invincible embodiments in the era of weaponry. Compared to the Moon Blade Archers, who are all members of an assassination unit, the elephant soldiers who ride these heavy war elephants actually serve more like servants to the war elephants. Yes, you heard it right, the elephant soldiers are not the controllers of the war elephants. They are only responsible for taking care of their daily needs, feeding these huge creatures, bathing them, and grooming their bodies. The core forces of the heavy armored war elephant unit are not humans, but these mammoth war elephants themselves. Adult mammoth war elephants have almost the intelligence of human teenagers. The human pioneers encountered this species on the grasslands of the southern continent. After an initial hostility and war, with the help of certain individuals, the current heavy armored war elephant unit was established. Humans were responsible for making armor for war elephants and providing them food. The war elephants joined the human battlefield and helped them conquer all enemies, resulting in a mutually satisfying trade. Compared to the saber-toothed tigers of the wilderness rangers, the lifespan of a war elephant was longer. It was said that they could live up to 300 years. The war elephant soldiers of Nanda Road often took care of one war elephant for their entire lives. They dedicated themselves to this profession and took pride in it, passing it down from generation to generation. At this moment, the members of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order who stood before the war elephant were few descendants of the war elephant family. These girls had a mysterious mission. They were not communicating with the war elephant soldiers, but rather with the ancient and powerful war elephants that possessed ancient wisdom. Amo. Amo. Take more. The people from the Sia continent didn't understand the gestures and secret language passed down through generations by the war elephant family. The dark-skinned girls quickly gained the upper hand. The largest war elephant in the heavy-armored war elephant unit stood over 5 meters tall. It was possibly the closest species to a giant in this world. The leader of the armored war elephant unit shook its long trunk and then stomped the ground forcefully. Not far away, from the most mysterious region of the continent, Lamia Priestess Immerse, one of the humans' archenemies, also shook her tail and secretly transmitted information. That's right, it was the mysterious Lamia clan that originally brought together the alliance between humans and the war elephant clan. It was the achievement of a certain generation of snake-eyed priests. The war elephant clan used to belong to the Leviathan faction, but because their habitat, the South Continent, was too far away, they didn't participate in the war that determined the ruler of the Sia continent. After the humans' influence finally spread to the South Continent, the Lamia priests made a decision to bring the war elephant clan into the humans' camp and sign an equal contract with them. For humans who migrated to the South Continent, facing various plagues and the threat of death, this was an irresistible temptation. For the Lamia clan, this was a hidden move, even though they didn't know how long it would take to see the results, but planning for the future is the unique strategic policy of the Lamia clan. Compared to the simple-minded troll clan, the Lamia clan's advantage in intelligence was obvious. Only if the Leviathan faction goes to war with humans again, this hidden move will show its effectiveness. However, now Immerse decided to activate this hidden move ahead of time. Compared to the goals of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order, the war between the Leviathan faction and humans became insignificant. She believed that with the appearance of the Holy Silver Dragon, the whole world would soon experience a great change. The emergence of the underground cemetery confirmed Immerse's thoughts even more. The main theme of this era was no longer the war between the Leviathan faction and the human camp. With the disappearance of the dragon race, the will of the Holy Silver Dragon, Ash, became the will of the Leviathan faction. Without even realizing it, Yunshi had already been regarded as the leader of the Leviathan faction in this era, and the camp's mission of reviving Leviathan was in full swing. Lamia, mermaids, and the troll clan were at the forefront and tasted the sweetness. After the gnomes and several other races also got a share, the whole Leviathan faction was secretly celebrating. Even though the Leviathan alliance still existed after losing its leader, it remained fragmented and scattered without a core. The mermaid clan ruled the oceans, the Lamia clan controlled the swampy areas, and the troll clan secluded themselves in volcanic regions. The once powerful Leviathan faction could be said to be in name only, never returning to its former glory. The appearance of the Holy Silver Dragon Yunshi was like a lighthouse in the dark world for the long-disbanded Leviathan faction, the only hope. Yunshi didn't do anything, he simply passively released his dragon's spiritual energy, allowing Saramanda, Immerse, and Heidi to all achieve their hero-ranked status. Immediately, he was recognized as the new leader of the Leviathan faction. The prince of the human kingdom called Ash deceives the naive little girls in the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. The elites of the Leviathan faction can easily tell that Yunshi cannot be human just by smelling him. Even Saramanda, who has a carefree personality, discovered Yunshi's true identity after spending a few days with him. She reached an agreement with Immerse and Heidi. The leader appeared, and the once scattered Leviathan alliance naturally returned. With Saramanda, Immerse, and Heidi, the the most outstanding representatives of the new generation of Leviathan, the entire Leviathan alliance is rapidly rebuilding. Many elites from the Mermaid clan, Lamia clan, and Troll clan received their information and are now leaving the sea, swamps, and volcanoes, heading towards the Tower of the Gods. The selection process for the third and fourth terms of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order is tailored specifically for them. While Yun Shi is still completely unaware of this. After all, he chose the main task, Sia's Light, which involves collecting the trials of the 12 constellation gods' weapons. He would never have imagined that the progress of the other task, Leviathan Resurrection, is far more active than Sia's Light. It has now exceeded 70%. Chapter 1208 The Heavy Armored War Elephant Core from the South Continent was one of Lamia clan's hidden cards. It was originally prepared for a possible second war between factions that could arise with humans. However, now, this hidden card is being put into action directly. Because Lamias have come to the conclusion that a future faction war is no longer necessary. Essentially, the war between the Leviathan faction and the human faction was for the distribution of resources in this world. Humans needed more resources to grow, while the Leviathan faction needed vast lands for reproduction. This was an irreconcilable contradiction and the fundamental reason for humans waging war against the dragon race. The emergence of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order is a new signal for the Leviathan faction. The appearance of the mysterious ancient relic, the sacred silver dragon, has shown the Leviathan faction a brand new dawn. The Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order's goal is not limited to this world, but to a broader future. The strong members of the Leviathan faction also chose this path and decided to create a brand new future with the new Holy Silver Dragon Alliance as the core. With the agreement reached between the Knights of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order from the South Continent and the heavy armored war elephant troops, the progress of the Leviathan faction in reclaiming Su has increased once again, surpassing 75%. Not only here, but also in the Church Legion from the West Continent, there are appearances of the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. This time, it was the mermaid Princess Heidi who went to negotiate. The human church, which is the religious power, didn't exist in the divine era. In the divine era of Sia's world, it was the age of knights and mages, especially the powerful red-robed mages who dominated the land. They built one mage tower after another, and even today, remnants of those mage towers can still be seen all over the continent. In that era, there was no soil for the existence of religion. Powerful red-robed mages controlled the entire world. In the divine era, when magical power was at its peak, magic spells were the strongest force. It was not until the end of the divine era and the arrival of the period of magic tide decline that humans struggled to leave Sia continent and began to immigrate to other continents, facing extremely harsh environments. It was then that a certain belief quietly emerged. At this moment, the priests in the Western Black Crusade are the messengers of God. This divine being, beloved by the people of the Western continent, was born after the divine era. With a black cross as its emblem, it is a deity of courage and hope. The priests of this deity of courage and hope excel in a praying technique called battle hymn. As long as there is a priest present, the Crusaders can unleash unimaginable fighting power. The courage hymn that boosts willpower. The passionate hymn that enhances attack power. The sacred hymn that heals injuries. Within the context of the declining magic era, the Crusaders, who still possess extraordinary power inheritance, may be the rarest army in the human world, led by priests who excel in divine magic. As long as the priests are still present, the Crusaders will never surrender, even if they shed their last drop of blood. They will fight to the end. So why can the priests still have extraordinary casting abilities when all the human mages have perished? Do the gods they believe in truly exist? The answer is that there are no gods in this world, except one, creator god Sword Sia. This is the origin of the Sia tribe and the only deity recognized by the Leviathan faction. As for the god of courage and hope in the western continent, it was created by the mermaid clan. Yes, just like the heavily armored war elephant corps in the south continent, the cross church of the west continent is also a creation of the Leviathan faction, penetrating into humanity through the dominate mermaid clan. Similarly, they are weapons prepared for the possible outbreak of a second world war between the Leviathan faction and humanity in the future. The priests of the god of courage are not pure humans, or rather, pure humans cannot master the divine art called prayer at all. The essence of this divine art comes from the mermaid clan's bloodline, a transcendental physique created by the fusion of mermaid clan's magic and human babies. Every time this secret art is cast, it requires the precious casting material called black whale oil, and a voluntary sacrifice of a royal member of the mermaid clan. The number of royal members in the mermaid clan is not many, and the sacrifice of each individual is a big event. However, in order to create this non-existent belief in gods, they still choose this most difficult path. Naturally, these extraordinary priests know where they come from and faithfully follow their own missions, spreading the belief in the god of courage. They are children of mermaids and the children of God in the Courage Church, serving as the spiritual leaders of the West Continent. For humans, hope is necessary, even if it is false and the divine doesn't exist. After experiencing centuries of deceit, the false noble families can become true aristocrats. The non-existent divine, through the dedication of the marine priests over generations, becomes a sanctuary for the human soul. Leaving behind the Sia continent, the Courage Church has laid roots in the West Continent, gradually establishing cities, civilizations, and nations. The Church has played a crucial role in this process. The existence of prayer magic and the belief in the god of courage are as natural to the people of the West Continent as breathing. They are baptized in the Church from birth, gathering every weekend to pray. Young boys with the talent for combat are nurtured by the Church and eventually become loyal crusaders. Growing up listening to tales of brave knights and understanding the importance of the priests to the Courage Church, they are willing to die for the priests. This loyalty transcends earthly bonds and is more important than life itself. Oh, by the way, the priests of the god of courage have a similar beauty to that of mermaids, but in a male form. Heidi came before the Crusaders of the West Continent, politely bowing as a tribute to the predecessors who sacrificed their lives to fulfill their mission on this earth. Law. Then came a melodic song that could only be produced by mermaids. It was their unique way of conveying messages, known as the mermaid song. Several priests, dressed in black with perfect beauty, the god of courage, stood up one by one. They looked at each other and nodded. We understand. If that is everyone's will, the gods surely also expect it. For courage and hope. With a cross mark on their chests, the priests of the West Continent praised the non-existent deities and reached an understanding with the Holy Silver Dragon Knight Order. The progress bar for the epic quest, the resurrection of Leviathan, moved again, reaching 80%. Even though it wasn't Yunshi who took on this mission, he was now in a deserted tower not far from the Babylon Sky Tower, nervously watching the faceless god in front of him. His next camp mission, Sia's Light, was reaching a critical point. The purpose of this mission was to collect 12 constellation gods' weapons and ultimately revive Su, the creator god Sia. Originally, Yunshi thought that this mission was simply about collecting the scattered 12 constellation gods' weapons from around the world. However, after bringing back 8 pieces of the constellation god's weapons from the underground cemetery, which was ruled by his childhood friend, Phyllis, Yunshi realized that things were not as simple as he had imagined. At first, it wasn't very obvious, just a slight sign. As time passed, this sign became more and more obvious. Specifically, the faceless god, who was originally blank, was emitting a strong signal. The 8 constellation gods' weapons also responded to the signal emitted by the faceless god. Yunshi believed that if it wasn't for Pafu's mischief, the original system of the faceless god would have woken up and accepted these 8 constellation gods' weapons. This means that these 8 constellation gods' weapons were originally meant for the faceless god. The mission of the faceless god is to collect these constellation gods' weapons and, in the end, restore the legendary creator god's sword Sia. Yunshi could even deduce that this mission had always existed. However, it was not originally him who was supposed to carry out this mission, but Ain, a girl from the Adley lineage who fully awakened her virgin constellation bloodline many years later. Since birth, she could sense the existence of the faceless god and would personally release its seal, using the power of her bloodline to pass all trials and gain the recognition and inheritance of the faceless god. When all 12 constellation gods' weapons are gathered, the faceless god will awaken completely, revealing the invincible stance of the divine vessel and uniting Sia's world. That era would be the resurrection of the creator god's sword Sia. As for Yunshi, it was obvious that he had no part in this plan because he never received the faceless god's inheritance. It seemed like this was not something prepared for him. However, Yunshi had Pafu in his hands. The mischievous Pafu caused the original system of the faceless god to crash. The bloodline recognition and matching mechanism that should have existed disappeared along with it. The Pafu system replaced the original divine vessel system, allowing Yunshi to use the power of the faceless god. However, the mission of the faceless god didn't disappear. The system woven by Pafu, which allowed the future Sia to manipulate the bloodline of the faceless god, was the only thing destroyed. The faceless god itself didn't suffer any damage. It is a puppet prepared for the gods, a vessel carrying the mission of resurrecting Sia. Now, this vessel has encountered the constellation god's weapons that Yunshi has retrieved and immediately entered the predetermined mission mode. The faceless god, sleeping in the Tower of the Gods, is the cradle of the god and the container that protects the creator god Sia. One by one, the constellation god's weapons were absorbed into the faceless god. The blank face of the faceless god gradually started to reveal beautiful contours. That was a feeling of nostalgic memories for Yunshi, as if he had seen the shadow in a dream. Gentle yet firm. Beautiful and lovely. Although the most important and spiritual eyes were still closed, and one eye was covered by a steel eye patch, the faceless god had already begun to show the charm of a divine being. How did you do this? I can feel it, something is awakening in Su. Yunshi looked at the faceless god with immense respect. He was wrong, completely wrong. This might not be some faceless god, it was just a nickname given by the uninformed Ain to this perfect puppet. When the faceless god obtains its true face and opens its eyes, this towering 40-meter puppet will undergo a complete transformation. The faceless god will be inscribed with the essence of the creator god Sia and become a half-divine being. At that time, the faceless god will be a flawless and sublime existence, a gift prepared by the mysterious puppet maker for his friend Sia. The 8 constellation gods' weapons shaped the mouth, nose, eyebrows, and ears of the faceless god, with only the final and most important eyes remaining unfinished. Yunshi knew that the faceless god would only have a true appearance after he collected the last 4 constellation gods' weapons. At that moment, it was also the moment when the legendary creator god, Sia, revived Su in this world, the end point of his trial called Sia's Light. After absorbing 8 constellation gods' weapons, the faceless god fell silent once again, but now Yunshi's gaze towards the faceless god had changed. He could clearly sense that something was different. The faceless god infused with the 8 constellation gods' weapons was evolving towards a higher stage. Everything was predestined, whether it was him or the faceless god who was originally meant to welcome a descendant of Sia's bloodline in a future time period, they were doing the same thing. Creator god Sword Sia will undoubtedly revive Su in this world, displaying the glory of the divine. Pafu. Is there something different? Entering the core of the faceless god once again, Yunshi discovered that the surroundings were completely different from before. On the previously blank floor of the core space, a huge emblem appeared, composed of 12 different constellation patterns, with 8 of them already illuminated, emitting a mysterious radiance naturally. Pafu! Pafu! Inside the gem on Yunshi's chest, the little creature called Pafu called out to its clones and received many echoes of poof, poof. Echoes from all directions told Yunshi that the Pafu system still existed. Not only that, but it seemed to have gained some unimaginable benefits. It seemed that while the faceless god automatically absorbed 8 constellation gods' weapons, the Pafu clones were also considered part of its body and joined in this process. The faceless god, evolving towards the perfect divine vessel, had a power that Yunshi couldn't understand. The Pafu clones, who already had exceptional potential and adaptability, gained more than triple the strengthening as a result. Now, Yunshi could control the faceless god for a significantly longer time, increasing from 5 minutes at a stretch to 15 minutes. Chapter 1209, Connect. Standing in the center of the faceless god's core, Yunshi reached out his hand. The real Pafu emerged from the dragon gem on his chest, curiously connecting with the extensively evolved clones. The new Pafu system is now in sync with Yunshi, feeling almost like one person. In just a breath's time, when Yunshi opened his eyes again, he saw the vision of the faceless god. Now he can feel the operation of every Pafu unit. In the past, he could only barely control it when he reached a state of overload. But now, even without being in an overloaded state, he can effectively control the faceless god. He extended his finger, then tightly clenched it into a fist. The wings on his back, which were previously uncontrollable, extended naturally. Flying used to be the biggest weakness of the faceless god and a major disadvantage in battles against the Rift Space Dragon. If it weren't for the accidental capture by the magnificence of Sky Dance, it would have been difficult for Yunshi to lock onto the target. Among the 4 ancient weapons in the underground cemetery, the Rift Space Dragon posed the greatest threat to the faceless god. Apart from the magnificence of Sky Dance when fully charged, Yunshi didn't have many moves that could threaten the Rift Space Dragon flying 10,000 meters high. Until this moment, the wings that couldn't be successfully connected by the Pafu system finally opened up to Yunshi. Ding! The wings, made entirely of metal, spread out layer by layer and weaved into a pair of steel wings behind Yunshi. Now I can fly, and the gravity of this land can no longer hold me back. Just like the Rift Space Dragon, the faceless god is a weapon that surpasses all levels of civilization in this world. It is God's vessel. The gods that cannot fly don't exist. These steel wings are not only the weapons of the faceless god, but also the soaring will that can tear through the sky. After absorbing the 8 constellation gods' weapons, Yunshi could feel the power of the faceless god gradually being unsealed, as if Su was awakening from a long sleep. Perhaps, when all 12 constellation gods' weapons are gathered, the legendary creator god Sword Sia will also be resurrected along with this faceless god, bringing Su back. What would this Sia's world, the legendary founding god, look like? Boz. As if sensing Yunshi's question in his heart, the inside of the faceless god started to emit a gentle silver light screen. In front of Yunshi's eyes, a large amount of silver radiance spread out, transporting him into a dreamlike world. A black behemoth soared through the sky. It was a sky beast that was so large that it could cover the entire Sia continent, floating above an ultra-giant gaseous planet. It happily swallowed the still cloudy star bodies and considered this newborn gas planet as its own territory. You can tell that it really enjoys this good life. The recently born supergiant gas planet emits a lot of energy from the world's origins every moment. That is exactly the energy it needs to evolve as a fantasy creature, a rare essence of the stars. Occasionally, there are intruders, monsters, who try to steal this treasure in the star domain. Without exception, this black sky beast defeats and eats them all. Every time it eats a monster, the sky beast's body grows a little bigger. With absolute advantages, it can even defeat its peers who are stronger than itself. It is the ruler of this star domain, the one and only king. No one can stop its evolution. It just needs another 1,000 years to consume enough essence from the gas planet, and then it will complete its final step. Proudly, the sky beast hides the existence of this special star with its grown, massive body, and considers it its own possession. However, the star has its own will and begins to dislike the sky beast, which constantly absorbs its essence. So, one day, a star contacted a special being and made a sound. "Help me. I dislike this." After several decades, one day, a great being responded to the newly born star's will. A beautiful silver sword light tore through the barriers of the world from an infinitely distant world, carrying countless wounds, and traveled to this unfamiliar world. What is that? The huge sky beast looked blankly at the sword light, still unaware of what it had encountered. Even though it was worn and almost broken, the silver sword light still proudly danced along the path paved with endless starlight, directly aimed at the endless sky beast. That was the final sword. That sword symbolized wisdom, courage, and love. Even if my body breaks, I will fulfill the final promise. The promise is to be completed, whether it takes 1,000 years or 10,000 years. Every day, the sun rises from the ground. Even if surrounded by relentless darkness, I will use my incomplete body to shatter it for you. With my last bit of strength, the shattered divine sword transformed into countless starlights, piercing through the proud sky beast's body, a fantasy creature that constantly absorbed the power of stars, and killed it in the sky above the planet. Roar! The sky beast, instantly struck with a fatal blow, let out cursed and unwilling sounds. Its body turned into huge fragments, falling from the sky onto the planet that remained in a gaseous state. The body of the fantasy creature started to transform into the earth, mountains, and oceans. Upon the shattered body struck by the divine sword, new life appeared, while the sword itself broke into 12 pieces, scattered all over the newborn land. That dreadful resentment turned into a realm beyond iron and steel, imprisoning and binding this land, symbolizing Leviathan's unwavering persistence to never surrender. Many years later, the era of giants and dragons conquering ended, and a brand new race called humans emerged onto the world stage. In the beginning, there were only 12 people in this group. They were welcomed by many different groups, including dragons, because they could have children with other groups. At that time, no one could have imagined that the human race, which started with only 12 people, would multiply to such a terrifying number. The Golden Age had arrived. Like a guide of destiny, humans were born from the 12 constellation gods' weapons. They eventually defeated the dragons and became the rulers of the continent. However, the broken 12 constellation gods' weapons showed no signs of reuniting. It seemed like something was still missing. Until one day, a distant starlight pierced through the heavens' banishment, which had been transformed by the resentment of Leviathan the sky beast, and shone upon this secluded world. The faceless god appeared. That was the hope of this world, a gift from a distant friend who had created the divine sword of this world, and also a promise. Chapter 12:10. So this is Sia. Yunshi finally learned the truth behind the words of the Creator God and the memories he obtained from the faceless god. The sword that was covered in countless scars, having gone through numerous wars and burning its last power to pierce through Leviathan the sky beast, was Sia. Despite being almost shattered beyond recognition, that glimpse of a torn endless starry sky, like a crystal-clear aurora, still held an irresistible allure. Even Leviathan the sky beast, with its power to devour planets, couldn't withstand the sword that shattered the void. One can imagine the terror of striking an almost shattered opponent with this sword. "I will revive you." Yunshi opened his eyes, looking at the silver-white radiance on his fingertips. The mission of the faceless god is to revive Su with the Creator God's sword, Sia. If this is the trial he must complete, he is more than willing to do it. Buzz! The shiny silver light curtain faded away like flowing water. Compared to before, Yunshi could clearly feel that the spirituality of the faceless god was increasing continuously. At this moment, the faceless god was no longer the cold and mechanized giant he first met. After accepting the existence of the Pafu system, God's vessel seemed to be slowly opening up its secrets to Yunshi. What was just seen was a part of the creator god's Sword Sia's memories. However, there were still many vague parts in the memories. Where did God's Sword Sia come from? The planet continuously absorbed by Leviathan, how did it send out a distress signal and wait for the salvation of God's Sword Sia? After that, how was life born in this world? Yunshi was very curious about what exactly happened in all of this. Oh, and the starlight that brought the faceless god to this world, it seems to contain a huge mystery. And in that starlight, Yunshi sensed a faintly familiar scent. It seems that the stars will choose this world as a place to test for a reason. This world is a place that the stars will watches over, and effectively prevents any outside gods from spying. Apart from the owner of the underground cemetery, Phyllis, Yunshi hasn't encountered any other outsiders in this world. Almost there, just 4 more. After collecting 8 pieces of the constellation god's weapons, Yunshi looked towards the distant horizon. The ocean, the battleground of the final clash between humans and the Leviathan faction. In that great war, 3 pieces of the constellation god's weapons were permanently lost in the ocean, becoming humanity's most shameful battle. Perhaps it's time to go there and have a look. The deep sea, where even sunlight doesn't exist, located in an ancient and secluded area beneath the depths of the ocean. Phew! Ha! A loud breathing sound echoed in this deep sea area that even the mermaid clan couldn't reach. It's in the ocean, but there is air here. From the structure of the Earth's crust, this is a sea within the sea, and it is the most primitive form of a gaseous ocean in the world. It's a world structure that humans can't imagine, and it's an environment that theoretically shouldn't exist. If humans were to come here, they would be shocked to discover that the concentration of magic in this gaseous ocean is more than 100 times that of the divine era. It's a value that shouldn't be possible in a normal environment. This is the initial form of this planet. The primeval sea evolved from a massive gaseous planet. Right now, in this ocean, a large black creature is greedily breathing. Every breath absorbs countless magic, but the expelled magic is less than 1/10 of the original amount. Thousands of years ago, this kind of breathing was completely opposite. Back then, a large amount of magic was exhaled, while only a very small part of magic was absorbed. Among the exhaled magic, there were more or less some silver-colored fragments. Those were the dust left behind by the shattered creator god Sword Sia. Except for the 12 largest fragments, it remained as powder. Unleashing the one strike of the sky beast's instant kill sword came with a price. After that strike, creator god Sword Sia was already shattered, using up its final strength. And that incident also brought nightmare-like torment to the immortal sky beast. Not only was its body shattered and turned into the land and oceans of the planet, even its will suffered fatal injuries. It made its way through millions of years in a daze. However, everything changed on a certain day in the divine era when some deep-sea races discovered the gaseous ocean beneath the endless abyss. These ancient deep-sea races sensed the breath of the ancestors in this gaseous ocean. Leviathan, the sky beast, a giant, a dragon, the origin of all magical creatures, it didn't die, it is still alive, and it is sleeping in this primordial gaseous ocean. The deep-sea races that discovered this secret made a decision. That decision profoundly affected the whole world, making the greatest enemy of humankind disappear forever in Sia's world. The dragon clan has been destroyed. Yes, most people in this world may find it hard to believe, but the once dominant dragon clan, situated at the top of the pyramid, no longer exists. They all fell into a trap set by the deep-sea race and were sacrificed to this gaseous ocean, which is the body of Leviathan. At this moment, the floating gems in the gaseous ocean are the last traces left by the dragon clan in this world. The strongest race born from the body of Leviathan has also returned to Leviathan, as if it were the cycle of destiny. Along with the dragon clan, the deep-sea race also threw in 3 human weapons called Constellation Gods weapons, which fell into their hands after the humans' defeat. These 3 Constellation Gods weapons have the ability to restrain Leviathan's outbursts. They are used by the deep-sea race as a means to control the progress of Leviathan's revival. That's right, these mighty deep-sea races are trying to control their ancestors and attempt the feat that has never been achieved in Sia's world. Their goal is simple, not to target any particular race in this world, but to turn the entire world into an ocean, submerging it in endless water. Everything will return to the deep sea, to the mighty god. The species with octopus heads were deeply convinced about the future, as it was a divine revelation passed down from their ancestors millions of years ago. Recently, Leviathan's actions have become more active, and the 3 powerful weapons of Sia constellation, called God's weapons, can barely control the sky beast's breathing. A small group of creatures living in the deep sea felt very happy, because a special celebration was happening again. This time, there was even a divine messenger appearing, named Ada, a deity in human form, exactly as described in the records, with a body made up of countless black particles. The time has come, and this world is about to become a realm of the deep sea. Chapter 12:11. In front of the huge ancient sea, black particles began to gather and formed scattered eyes made of runes, gazing at the partially formed and elusive existence within the ancient sea. Leviathan, the sky beast that once devoured planets, the origin of all creatures in Sia's world. Its power is so strong that even if Sia's god's sword shattered its whole body, it would not die, but continue to stubbornly live on. After a long period of time, using only the most basic ability of inhaling and exhaling, it began the process of resurrection. This is the terrifying aspect of being a legend ranked. Apart from being completely forgotten, there is no way to completely erase the existence of a legend ranked. Essentially, the legend ranked has surpassed the limitations of the physical body. Even if the soul is shattered, there is still a chance for it to return. The sentient beings that inhabit this Sia's world, whether the original giants and dragon clans or the later humans, have never forgotten the existence of Leviathan the sky beast. If Sia represents life and radiance, then Leviathan represents power and dominance. As long as you look up at the sky, all the creatures in Sia's world know that the sky where Leviathan takes form is right there. The once glorious divine era civilization has challenged the sky many times, but the result has always been a complete defeat. The Rift Space Dragon of the Dragon Clan has fallen. The Red Robe Mages of the Divine Era have also perished. Only that steel-like sky remains unmoving, and only in cycles of thousands or even tens of thousands of years do small cracks occasionally appear. The 10 Leaves Alliance sent investigators to this world through that fleeting crack. On the side of the abyss, ancient gods once bestowed part of their will upon this world, and they chose the race known as the Deep Sea Clans, who have octopus-like heads. As a powerful race that dominates the deep sea, the biggest problem plaguing the deep sea clans is that the deep sea areas they inhabit are extremely unique. Only a very few strong clan members can come up to the shallow sea areas to interact with other races. Weak clan members will have their internal structures collapse as soon as they leave the deep sea environment. This also led to the fact that, despite having intelligence that rivaled or even surpassed humans, and being trusted by the Dragon Clan and having abundant resources, the entire population remained very scarce. The ocean area that could meet their living requirements was only a small part of Sia's world, and it had long been unable to satisfy the reproduction needs of their clan. In order to solve this problem, the deep sea tribes tried every means possible, but the population still had to be limited to around 3,000 people in the end. anymore, and the food in the deep-sea region would not be able to support their population. This unique deep-sea food was essential for their growth and development. In order to control the quantity of food, despite having a lifespan of over 1,000 years, they had to suppress the number of offspring in their race, and even kill the little lives born into this world due to accidents. For an intelligent race, this was a form of great torture. They had to witness the birth of little octopus heads, but immediately had to put them to death because the race couldn't provide the food they needed to grow. Only when a member of the clan died would they allow a new descendant to be born. This harsh family planning system drove many teenagers within the clan insane, and caused several wars within the clan. As a clan located in the deep-sea region, and hardly ever having wars with external clans, the most deaths in their history occurred due to civil wars over birth indicators. The problem was that even if they won the civil war and temporarily had a large number of reproductive indicators, the winning side would soon encounter the same problem. The number of 3,000 people was like an unpassable nightmare, haunting every generation of the deep-sea tribe leaders. For the deep-sea tribe, who had a natural lifespan of over 1,000 years and possessed powerful psychic abilities that even caught the attention of the dragon tribe, this kind of pain was something no other race could understand. Even though even the weak humans and domestic animals on the land didn't have to worry about food, the mighty deep-sea tribe had to kill their own children to ensure the tribe's food supply. In order to change this phenomenon, every leader of the deep-sea tribe spared no expense in searching for a way out. Among them, one generation of leaders once sensed the power from the abyss, which gave this underwater race a completely different belief from other races. Even though it was just a vague and elusive hope, it was still better than nothing for the deep-sea tribe. Then, everything changed when they discovered the remains of Leviathan. No, it was the resurrecting corpse. That immense primeval sea held endless power, which came from Leviathan the sky beast, a legendary divine being. The entire Sia's world comprised mountains and oceans formed by the corpses of Leviathan. Leviathan was the foundation of Sia's world's transformation from a gaseous planet to its present state. If we can't solve the problem of the limited amount of food in the deep sea, then we need to think of a different way. Let the deep sea expand. This is the crazy idea that popped into the chief's mind the moment he saw this primeval sea where the Leviathan wreckage was discovered, and he couldn't stop himself from pursuing it. Guided by some kind of will in the depths, the deep-sea tribe began to make big moves. First, they obtained a key to control the Leviathan wreckage from the dragon tribe, constellation god's weapons from Sia. Then, under the name of finding a treasure that could possibly change Sia's world in the future, and using parts of the Leviathan wreckage, they successfully deceived the trust of the dragon tribe. One after another, they brought all the members of the dragon tribe into the primeval sea, and with the power of the Sia god weapon, they controlled the Leviathan wreckage to devour these dragons. Like a sacrifice to the great origin, the long-lost Leviathan wreckage happily accepted the lives of all the dragons and transformed them into gemstones. The dragons in this world are the perfect beings evolved from the essence of the Leviathan wreckage. Faced with the call of the Leviathan wreckage, they are completely powerless to resist. Even the Mermaid clan and the Lamia clan, who are close to the Dragon clan, didn't know that the dragons had returned to their original home. And then, it came. The deep-sea creatures, who once placed part of their will in this world, believed in ancient gods of their kind. The deep-sea creatures went against their own instincts, which was the masterpiece of the previous ancient gods. It can be said that it was the temptation of this ancient god that led to the downfall of the Dragon clan. And at this moment, floating above the primeval sea, is a being called Ada of the Abyssal Will. Chapter 12:12 Leviathan. Ada. A huge magic eye floated in the sky above the primeval sea, slowly releasing a large number of black particles. The remains of Leviathan, which were originally in a state of natural breathing, were gradually contaminated by the black. Around the ancient sea, the deep-sea creatures with octopus heads and bodies made up of tangled tentacles cheered one by one. Leviathan! 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 Ada! 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 The dream that their whole family has been chasing for millions of years, even willing to betray and sell out their original allies, the Dragon Clan, is now right in front of them. The enormous ancient sea began to churn unnaturally, releasing black bubbles one by one. After millions of years of silence, the remains of Leviathan, which had been instinctively breathing, were slowly wriggling and the rhythm of its breath was changing noticeably. A huge change is happening. Like the restlessness before a storm, Sia's world has undergone some unknown changes. The magic tide is stirring. On the fourth day of the call from the underground cemetery. Nestled among the mountains in the center of the continent, Babylon's Sky Tower is continuing to rise at a visible speed, heading towards the unknown sky. The forces and tribe representatives from West Continent, South Continent, and Sia Continent have all gathered below Babylon's Sky Tower, waiting for the upcoming alliance. Even the tribe on the edge of human influence arrived beneath the Sky Tower yesterday. Right now, beneath the Tower of Babel in Babylon, there gathered a group of intelligent beings who represented the entire Sia's world. Besides humans, other races have also arrived. The Mermaid Clan, rulers of the ocean. The Lamia Clan, rulers of the swamps. The Troll Clan, once known for terrorizing people. The cowardly and timid dwarf tribe. Because of a certain event, the Leviathan faction reunited and became the largest force outside of the human camp. However, all of this was insignificant to the owner of the underground cemetery. Her plan had reached its final stage with no possibility of failure. The Phantom of the Opera appeared and conquering the world was just a side task. Collecting precious resources and minerals from all over the continent, almost emptying the collections of various countries and powers, is the most important mission of the Army of the Undead. Current progress of collection, 60%. The materials controlled by the countries and powers have all been moved to the warehouse of the underground cemetery. The remaining 40% is scattered in various corners of the continent. Even with the full excavation by the Army of the Undead and using all the hero-ranked units as miners, it will take about a month to collect them all. After all, the precious minerals born in the whole world from the end of the Divine Era to the present are resources that the first generation of the King of Undead couldn't sustain on its own. Being able to collect them in a month is already close to a cheat-like speed. Elphilis's arrival is not a coincidence, but because Sia's world has produced enough resources to build the Star Bridge, which made Ten Leaves Alliance decide to send its own envoy to complete this epic task. Discovering a brand new form of civilization in God's domain is enough to be remembered as a historic achievement, and it is also one of the shortcuts for hero-ranked individuals to shape a legend. If Elphilis were not a representative of the Four Leaves in the Ten Leaves Alliance, she would not have been chosen for this task. According to the agreement with the countries of this world, today is the day when the King of Undead of the Underground Cemetery comes forward to sign a formal alliance with them. It is also the time when the long-lost continental crown reappears. Even though Elphilis herself wasn't interested in the throne of this continent, once the Star Bridge is repaired, she will leave immediately, and the Ten Leaves Alliance and the forces of the Endless God's domain will handle the things that come after. But lack of interest is one thing, work still needs to be completed, and this is the dilemma of adults. At this time, Elphilis always reminisces about the carefree days in the small town. Compared to building the Star Bridge, leaving one's own name in the history of the Endless God's domain is an epic task that she prefers, along with having afternoon tea with little she and chatting about the recent happenings in the Endless God's domain. In front of little she doesn't need to carry any important missions, nor is she the heiress of the Ten Leaves Alliance or the representative of the Four Leaf. Today is a good weather. Woof. Elphilis puts down her helmet and enjoys the freshly delivered golden cream bread. Really, she has told herself more than once, this is the last piece, she won't indulge in food anymore after eating this piece. To control her appetite, she went as far as cutting a golden cream bread into 20 pieces with a small knife, and then locking each piece in a little box. She, the young lady from the 10 Leaves Alliance, restricted herself to eating only 1 piece a day. As for the result, you could tell just by looking at the neatly stacked pile of little boxes on the table. The quantity had already exceeded 3 digits. Yes, today is the day of the king's return. Kingdom's shield held a magnificent crown adorned with 7 gemstones, and both his hands trembled uncontrollably. Ruby, sapphire, topaz, turquoise, diamond, emerald, jade. These 7 pure and translucent gemstones were set on the crown, creating a dreamlike and magical radiance. This crown had countless replicas. Almost every famous king in the Divine Era history had a crown with 7 gemstones, claiming their right to the throne as the ruler of the continent. However, there was only one true continental crown. After enduring the test of time and sedimentation in the world, it naturally formed the prototype of a god weapon. Only one more step remained for this crown to transform into the crown of the king, the object of inheritance. For the king of the underground cemetery, the step was effortlessly easy. As long as he wished, he could complete it at any time. No one expected that this legendary crown, which had long been surrounded by rumors, had not yet completed that step until now. Do you want to become the king? Or, how about I give you this crown? Phyllis shrugged her shoulders, licked the white cream on her lips, and had a nonchalant expression on her face. It's really embarrassing to wear this tacky crown and declare I am the king to the continent. Whoever wants to be such a king can go ahead. No. That is your rightful position, no one can snatch it away, great king. Please remember, a king must understand the hearts of people. With a devout expression, Kingdom's shield kneeled down and offered their loyalty and vows to Phyllis. Chapter 12-13 Snap. 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 Colorful ribbons and balloons flew up into the sky around the Babylon Sky Tower, and magical fireworks once again bloomed in the sky of this continent after the end of the Divine Era. These are all treasures from the underground cemetery, which are considered ancient even among antiques. However, during the self-sealed million years, time almost stood still in the underground cemetery, and these treasures have also survived the long years until now. Rainbow jade. Fireworks of 7 different colors intertwined, forming a structure similar to a ribbon. Double fish jade pendant. 2 colors, white and black, mixed together, yet clearly divided into 2 parts. Receive the sky sword. Sharp golden light sword pierced the sky, tearing through the clouds like the light of dawn. In the Leviathan Empire's camp, the smartest person on the continent, Poicaré, shook his head sadly and said the names of each magical firework with a look of regret in his eyes. Every firework was a magical creation of the Divine Era, representing the magnificent civilization created by the Divine Era mages. That era can never be returned to again. These precious magical fireworks are excellent materials for studying the civilization of the Divine Era. It's such a waste to treat them like ordinary fireworks. There were many formulas inside, even he didn't know them. He had only seen the names of these fireworks in books. As the crystallization of magical elements, these magical fireworks can even be used as weapons. This means that every explosion in the sky right now is a genuine magical creation from the Divine Era. Why feel so sad? They are just toys, a deep voice whispered in Poicaré's ear. It was a lich, one of the elites from the underground cemetery. You are. Speaker Duke. Despite being transformed into a lich by the king of undead from the underground cemetery, Poicaré immediately recognized the red-robed lich standing before him. One of the greatest heroes of the Divine Era, the former leader of the Red Robe Mage Council that ruled the continent. He disappeared from the continent, and his whereabouts are unknown. Of course, the whereabouts of that person were only unknown to regular people. But the scholars who split from the underground faction at the time clearly recorded where he and the other politicians went. The underground cemetery, a place isolated from the world, was the hope for continuing the glory of the divine era. When it was discovered that magic still existed in the underground cemetery, it caused a huge uproar and led to the complete division of the Red Robe Mage Corps. Finally, some people decided to break into the underground cemetery and completely seal it, waiting for the long period of magic decline to end. The other group of people chose to stay on the surface, giving up the power of magic and embarking on the path of scholars. No one could prove who was right or wrong between the two sides. For the continuation of human civilization, both sides had their own reasons. Choosing to enter the underground cemetery meant isolating oneself from the world and sealing oneself for millions of years, waiting for the unknown period of magic decline to come to an end. During this process, what unexpected events would occur and whether humans could survive for millions of years by relying on the limited amount of magic, nobody knew for sure. The group that stayed on the surface accepted their fate of aging, sickness, and eventually losing magic. They desperately tried to pass on the sparks of civilization from the divine era. The magical era ended, and the era of knights began. The once mighty wizards fell from grace and became the subordinates of the knights they used to protect. They used their intelligence to assist the knights in achieving greatness and expanding their territories. For the wizards, that era was a time of great despair. Fortunately, they discovered that alchemy could still be used. The magic in the air was no longer enough to support their spellcasting, but the path called science allowed the alchemist warlocks to still possess some power. Meanwhile, there were a very small number of warlocks who didn't rely on the magic in the air, but instead inherited extraordinary powers through their own bloodlines. These warlocks avoided the most tragic fate that befell the wizards. In the year when the period of magic decline officially arrived, many wizards despaired and took their own lives. The scholars and alchemist warlocks who are still present now were born during the period of magic decline. They can hardly imagine what it means for wizards who are accustomed to using magic elements from the air to lose their magical abilities. The air was their essence, their life, their wisdom, and their everything. Duke was one of the most powerful wizards in the divine era. Poicaré could instantly recognize him because of the hexagram badge on his chest. The Star of Magic, a Sia's world god weapon that doesn't belong to the 12 constellation gods' weapon system, represents the leader of the Red Robe Mage Corps. It has been owned by the strongest members of the Red Robe Mage Corps throughout history. The ability of the god weapon, Fountain of Magic. A mage who holds this god weapon has a magic recovery speed more than 10 times faster than a normal hero-ranked mage, and they can also pay a price to triple their maximum magic capacity. For a magician, the powers of this god weapon are like cheating. It can recover magic 10 times faster, almost to the point of infinite magic, and increasing the limit 3 times means that certain impossible spells become within reach. The previous owners of the Star of Magic throughout the ages were famous forbidden spellcasters from the divine era. Many powerful forbidden spells were developed by them. Only those with 10 times faster recovery speed and triple the magic limit could come up with so many forbidden spells that humans couldn't possibly use. The last human to possess this Star of Magic was the former red-robed speaker, Duke, who was the last of his kind in the divine era. This magic god weapon, symbolizing the glory of the divine era magicians, ultimately disappeared with him in the underground cemetery. Poicaré didn't expect to see the emblem of the Star of Magic and the last red-robed speaker again in this era that had long disappeared from human history. You must be my descendant. Duke looked at Poicaré, his black eye sockets burning with green soul fire. Although long dead and turned to ashes, bound by the curse of the king of undead in the underground cemetery, as the last holder of the Star of Magic, he still retained most of his memories and wisdom. In contrast, other red-robed wizards who were slightly weaker showed signs of being eroded by the breath of death, their emotions slowly disappearing. He knew that one day he would also become like them. The erosive power of time is the most terrifying poison in the world, something even gods cannot avoid. However, for now, he still retained the majority of his memories and thinking ability from when he was human. At first sight, he recognized that the person standing in front of him was his descendant. Chapter 12:14 In the past, within the divided Red Robe Mage Corps, he chose to take the path of the underground cemetery, but forcefully made his son take a different path. This is a wisdom that humans learned during tribal times, not to put all their eggs in one basket. He himself entered the underground cemetery while leaving his descendants on the surface, having grand plans. Regardless of which side fails, the other side can still survive, no matter what kind of existence it may be, as long as there is hope in staying alive. Back then, no one could have imagined that the king of undead from the underground cemetery was still alive and held absolute dominion over everything in the underground cemetery. The most powerful Red Robe Mage Corps on the continent didn't even have the ability to release a decent spell against the owner of the underground cemetery, ending everything. We lost. It's difficult to admit this, but in the face of the King of Undead's absolute power, all strategies and plans became jokes. Even though Duke had the magical god weapon, he could only support for a short time, somewhere between 3 to 10 seconds. The power possessed by the King of Undead is beyond what any number of god weapons can change. It is a power that surpasses imagination, making even the mighty dragon feel fear. After we entered the underground cemetery, what happened to the realm of the mages? Despite already knowing the answer, Duke still wanted to hear from his descendants, to understand where he had made a mistake in preparing the path for them. Even without the power of magic, the mages still possess the highest wisdom on the continent. They are the legitimate inheritors of the Divine Era civilization. Furthermore, there are also special beings called warlocks who can cast spells without relying on studying or the magic particles in the air. It is strange that there is not even a trace left of the realm of magic until now. About 100 years later, all mage realms disappeared, and the era of the knights began. Poicaret shook his head. Who could have imagined that the knights, originally considered as mere cannon fodder on the battlefield of the Divine Era, easily created by the mages during their glorious period, would eventually become the new rulers of the continent? The warlock lineage didn't become the inheritors of the mages as expected. The arrival of the period of magic tide decline led to the decline of all supernatural powers, causing a significant decrease in the birth rate of warlocks and the gradual weakening of their strong bloodline power. In the end, it was the various low-level bloodlines that the mages initially studied that stubbornly survived, even becoming more valued than the mages themselves. Almost all the pure Divine Era bloodlines, except in the Sia Kingdom, have disappeared. The power of warlocks has also been affected by the decline of the magic tide period. Now, it is the era of mortals, the era of science. It was supposed to be like this. Poicaret looked puzzled at the Babylon Sky Tower rising from the ground in front of him and the undying magicians emerging from the underground cemetery. Why have these ancient beings of the Divine Era reappeared, one by one, when the research clearly showed that there was still a long time until the end of the magic tide period? It would take at least several generations, thousands of years later, for a new surge in magical power. This is the conclusion unanimously recognized by the scholars of the Empire. Indeed, the magical elements in the air are still so scarce. Duke nodded, agreeing with the assessment of his descendants. If he hadn't transformed into a lich form upon his death, he probably wouldn't be able to cast spells in this environment, let alone control a huge undead army. This world hardly possesses the elements necessary to give birth to powerful supernatural abilities. When he led the undead army to conquer those countries, he couldn't even find a handful of hero-ranked individuals. In comparison, the underground cemetery is clearly too extraordinary. The problem seems to have started from when the Queen used a forbidden spell called nuclear explosion. For the immense changes that have occurred on the continent in the past month, Poincare calculated many times, incorporating all the known information, and finally focused on one event. Before that event, the Leviathan Empire was only one step away from conquering the continent. The powerful First Magic Armor Corps had already defeated the last Royal Knight group in possession of Divine Era bloodline, celebrating their victory. Then, a forbidden spell appeared that should never have appeared in this era. A nuclear explosion instantly destroyed the entire First Magic Armored Legion, reducing the Empire's strongest 3 titled machines to ashes, not even leaving a single fragment. Based on later measurements, the temperature at the center of the nuclear explosion may have exceeded tens of millions of degrees, reaching a level that even calculations find terrifying. And the energy released by the nuclear explosion was hundreds of times greater than the accident inadvertently caused by the Divine Era mages as recorded in history. When Poincare reached this conclusion, he doubted his formula for the first time in his life. The nuclear explosion phenomenon discovered by the Divine Era mages was actually not a forbidden spell at all, but the result of a failed experiment. That failed experiment killed more than 3 mages in red robes, and everything related to the experiment was sealed. The impact of the experiment didn't disappear even after the end of the Divine Era, creating a large number of deformed creatures. The nuclear explosion phenomenon is the most terrifying and powerful material annihilation observed by humans in all records of the Divine Era, resembling the eruption of a small sun on the ground. It is much stronger than the previous nuclear explosion, with a core temperature that may exceed 10 million, close to the astronomical unit of billion. How could this be magic that humans can use during the period of magic tide decline? Nuclear explosion forbidden spell. Duke's soul fire shook violently. If he still had a jaw, it would probably be dislocated from the shock. Yes, didn't the records mention that the Council had studied the release of the nuclear explosion forbidden spell? As a descendant of the Red Robe Council, Poincare knew about that research. That's also why he considered the nuclear explosion the strongest forbidden spell of the Divine Era. However, all the records regarding the nuclear explosion were very confusing, and he didn't grasp the fundamental aspects of it. He still couldn't calculate a reasonable formula. There has never been any nuclear explosion forbidden spell. Duke firmly told his descendants. It was just a pipe dream. To cast the nuclear explosion forbidden spell, it would require the magic star to provide limitless magical support and increase the human hero-ranked magic pool by 100 times. It's just wishful thinking. Only a god can cast the nuclear explosion forbidden spell with a human body. That is a magic only gods can use, if that magic truly exists. Poincare stood up. He had long had this question. Duke's provided data only matched his calculations. The human body cannot possibly generate the magical power required to cast a spell as powerful as a nuclear explosion. Chapter 12:15. During the time known as the period of magic decline, only a few warlocks retained the ability to cast spells, and magic itself was almost non-existent. This is because the fundamental principle of meditation for mages is that the magic power is so scarce that it cannot be driven by human mental strength. Even so, Poincare was able to construct all known magical templates from the Divine Era using self-generated data. Anything that can be calculated, the Imperial Sage can compute for you. However, the calculation for the nuclear explosion forbidden spell is always incorrect, no matter how you estimate it. How can the human body contain the magical power required to unleash such a spell? According to his calculations, in order to cast a forbidden spell of the nuclear explosion level, the inside of a human body would need a structure similar to a miniature sun. Even the most powerful mages at the peak of the Divine Era have never achieved such a thing, or even had a theory for it. Then why does the nuclear explosion exist? Poicaré asked his ancestors, the former strongest mage in the continent's peak, and the leader of the Red Robes Council. That is, the power of science. Duke's eyes flickered with a distant flame, as if he had returned to the time when he hosted the nuclear explosion experiment. Yes, that famous nuclear explosion experiment on the continent, hailed as one of the craziest failed experiments of the wizards, was his achievement, or rather, one of his failures. Originally, he wanted to find another extraordinary path for the wizards, a way to master the power to destroy heaven and earth without needing magic. But he failed. The path he discovered was beyond the grasp of any wizard. No one could control the power of a nuclear explosion, not even the red-robed wizard counselors who stood at the pinnacle of the continent. 3 red-robed counselors, almost on par with his strength, were obliterated in that nuclear explosion. The temperature at the center of the explosion exceeded tens of millions of degrees, a temperature where no living being could survive. That is not a power that can be controlled by a hero-ranked individual. Once unleashed, it would turn an area of several kilometers into a complete hell. The resulting shockwave could even spread dozens of kilometers away, and certain unseen curses could continue for hundreds or thousands of years, causing deformities and distortions in the surrounding organisms. The attempts of the red-robed wizards failed. This is not the power of magic, but rather a different kind of power that can alter the material world. The problem is, this power has no meaning for the continuation of wizardry. Unable to control, unable to extract, only able to unleash a destructive power that can destroy everything in an instant, and it requires extremely precious resources. Most importantly, it also erodes the physical bodies of the wizards, shortening their lifespan. Duke, who was in charge of this experiment, started rapidly aging after that experiment. He had no choice but to use forbidden methods to sustain his own body. Nuclear explosion, it was like a nightmare. Duke recalled the sight of the flames he saw at that time. It was supposed to be a magical experimental site built hundreds of meters underground, but it was completely overturned by a huge mushroom cloud. It was as if a volcano had erupted, and everything was destroyed. He was once one of his best friends, the second seat of the Red Robe Council, who swore to change the fate of weak wizards. But he turned into ashes within that mushroom cloud. It's not the power of magic. Poicaré's body trembled slightly. For someone who was usually indifferent, this was the first time he showed an excited expression. It was intuition that grasped the pulse of the era, and it gave him an explanation as to why Ein, who wasn't even 16, could control such power. It turns out, it's not magic, but science. Yes, do you really want this kind of weapon? Duke hesitated. His remaining conscience told him that the choices he would make next could change the world. Yes, the science of this world needs this kind of power, this ultimate weapon. If we have this kind of power, then we can achieve a limited balance. For this era, peace requires the power of nuclear explosions. Poicaré kept calculating and reasoning, finally reaching this result. If both the Leviathan Empire and the Sia Kingdom possess the ultimate weapon of nuclear explosions, then military balance can be achieved. The Leviathan Empire won't attack the Sia Kingdom, and the Sia Kingdom itself cannot prevent the expansion of the Leviathan Empire due to its size. Finally, the continent will form an axis with the Leviathan Empire as the main power, bringing about the era Ludwig XII hopes for. Weapons that can destroy everything sometimes become the dawn of peace. It may seem funny, but it is indeed a reasonable future calculated by Poicaré. Well, here you go. The underground cemetery will eventually leave this world. The future of this world doesn't belong to me, a deceased person, but to all of you. Once Duke learned about the ultimate goal of the underground cemetery, he also intended to leave this world and see the scenery beyond the starry sky. The future of Sia's world will ultimately be determined by the people of this era. Passing on the weapon of nuclear explosions to his descendants, allowing his offspring to have a place in this grand era, is the last thing his ancestors can do. As for what his descendants plan to do with this weapon, whether it's war or peace, it's their own choice. What is gone, even if the deceased return, they are no longer the masters of this world. The power of the underground cemetery feels out of place in this world. Duke has had suspicions since the beginning, and now he understands that this power comes from beyond the stars. During the experiment, a total of 3 weapons like this were created. One of them exploded during the first experiment, and the other 2. The method of use is. Duke spoke the secret code that has been passed down through his family for generations, revealing the activation password for the most destructive weapon ever created by Sia's world to Poicaré. What is the principle of creating it? Poicaré obtained what could be the world's most powerful weapon, but he was not so excited. He gazed intensely at his ancestors. Instead of ready-made weapons, what he wanted to know more was the principle of creating this kind of weapon, which was even more important than 100 of these ultimate weapons. Duke hesitated once again. He could foresee that if he told his descendants how to make this weapon, the future of the world would definitely undergo immense changes. That principle didn't belong to magic, but to science. When the second-ranked person at that time created this weapon, they enthusiastically described to him how this power, derived from the essence of matter, would bring about a brilliant future if used by the mages. Unfortunately, all the elites from their faction died in that nuclear explosion, almost as if they were buried along with this taboo. Chapter 12:16 When this power was discovered, the Council of Red Robes split into 3 factions. The emerging faction that supported the research of nuclear explosions and controlled this powerful force. This faction, led by the second-ranked member of the council at that time, mostly consisted of young elite Red Robe mages. They were also a group of talented mages who emerged after the period of magic decline. Stay neutral and be cautious towards this new phenomenon's neutral faction. This group occupies the majority of the parliament and they are curious about the innovative ideas of these newcomers. However, they are also worried if this new power can truly benefit humanity. The leader of this group is Duke, the highest chairman. Lastly, there is a completely opposing faction to this experiment. They believe that this kind of power destroys the tradition of wizards and will bring immense disaster. This traditional faction is mainly composed of warlocks and some ancient magical families. At the beginning of the experiment, the emerging faction had the upper hand. The main researchers studying this new power, nuclear explosion, disregarded the opposition from the traditional faction. They had confident reasons since they were known as the last miracle generation. Like a flicker of light, after the period of magic tide decline began, a group of exceptionally talented young boys and girls emerged in the human society, rivaling the brightest times of the divine era. They had grand visions and the courage to go all out, daring to break free from all restraints and questioning all authorities. After the period of magic tide decline officially began, they were the most unwilling to accept the status quo and were willing to pay any price to seek a path for the future. During that era, they illuminated the entire period and were hailed as the last miracle. If Duke wasn't the oldest and didn't possess the magical crown called the God Weapon for over 100 years, he wouldn't dare claim to be better than the second-ranking mage, let alone hold the position of the president of the Red Robe Mage Council for consecutive terms. Even so, he knew that his position as the president would eventually be taken over by the energetic second-ranking mage, a young man named Homer. It took Homer only 35 years to go from being a normal person to a hero-ranked mage, and then almost reaching the pinnacle of hero-ranked as the 6th-ranked strongest mage. Duke, on the other hand, took a whole century to reach the same position. This was all thanks to Duke inheriting the God Weapon, the magical crown representing Sia's world, at the age of 50. He then spent 50 years practicing his magical healing ability with the God Weapon's super-speed magic restoration power. When Homer proposed the nuclear research project and gathered a large group of young geniuses to start the project, Duke was already 150 years old. For a peak Red Robe mage, this age was still considered relatively young. Among the previous Red Robe mages, the longest living president after reaching the 6th rank passed away at the age of 500. However, looking at Homer and the group of young people around him, Duke felt old. The future belonged to these young people. With an appreciative gaze, Duke remained neutral, but secretly supported their bold experiments. Soon, the research made groundbreaking progress. Homer displayed talents that were completely unmatched for his age. From the initial discovery of the essence of matter all the way to creating the first prototype, it took him less than 7 years. Duke had also imagined what kind of future would appear if this power could really be used by wizards. That night, young Homer burst into the speaker's room with his drawings, excitedly depicting that shining future moment that Duke never forgot, even after he died. Homer told him that this power was not solely his own idea, but a reconstruction based on certain incomplete records that he acquired. The principles and operation of supporting a nuclear chain reaction are likely not creations of Sia's world civilization, but rather the crystallization of wisdom from a more advanced civilization. In other words, that civilization had already mastered the use of nuclear explosion power and had acquired the ability to travel among the stars, which accidentally led to these records falling onto the Earth of Sia's world. Since this power was not a mere fantasy, as long as one traces and studies these records in reverse, it is possible to find a method of using this power. From the incomplete records obtained from Homer, once the power of nuclear explosion can be utilized by humans, it could potentially create a brilliant civilization called science. In that era, even if the wizards lost their magical abilities, they would still become the ultimate masters. For Sia's world, which has entered a period of declining magical tides, this is the best choice. Duke agreed to support Homer's research and secretly provided funds and resources to accelerate Homer's progress. In the 7th year of obtaining those incomplete records, Homer happily told his teacher Duke that the original product of studying this power using those records had been created. That is the necessary key to open this big door, called the igniter, a wonderful thing. From those incomplete records, it can be known that in order to control this huge power that can change the material world, the igniter is necessary. Homer and his team created 3 of these igniters in one go, and couldn't wait to witness the arrival of this new era. It was a great experiment destined to be recorded in human history, but no one expected the outcome of the experiment. The elites of the new era, the generation of the last miracle, gathered in the magic laboratory hundreds of meters deep underground, in a state of heightened vigilance, eagerly awaiting the arrival of the miracle. Duke, who secretly assisted his student as a neutral party, was also waiting for the glorious moment of his disciple's creation through a magic mirror in the wizard tower 10 kilometers away. If this experiment succeeds, he can rightfully pass on the position of the speaker and the inheritance of the god weapon, the magic star, to Homer. He has the spirit of innovation and creativity that he lacks, daring to say no to all traditions. The traditional knowledge of wizards could not change the future when the period of magic decline arrived and wizards were destined to decline. Even if his experiment failed this time, and the lighter couldn't ignite as expected, it's okay, he still has plenty of time. Being young is their greatest advantage for the final miracle. Everyone can forgive their failures and look forward to seeing more results after learning from their mistakes. At that time, even the traditionalists who opposed this experiment couldn't anticipate what would happen next. The wizards of Sia's world had no idea about the concept of the lighter mentioned in the incomplete records of that civilization. Almost the entire generation of the final miracle in Sia's world gathered in the experimental field that day, excitedly watching the countdown on the lighter covered by a powerful magic array. Chapter 12-17 Everything seemed to have happened just yesterday. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. A group of young men and women, full of energy and hope for the world's future, were gathered around the newly built ignition device. Their faces were filled with anticipation. Even from a distance of 10 kilometers, Duke, who was observing them with magic, believed that the world's future belonged to them. Whether they succeeded or failed, they certainly took a big step in history. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition. Homer, the most outstanding disciple, created the ignition device and proudly activated the switch, initiating the beginning of that nightmare. What happened in the next second would forever be etched in Duke's heart, even millions of years later. The orange sun appeared. Although it was smaller, its core temperature exceeded millions of degrees, burning everything, devouring everything, destroying everything. Its radiance instantly broke through a magic barrier consisting of 36 layers, which was considered impenetrable even by the most powerful spells. None of the layers could withstand even a second in front of this miniature sun. His favorite student, Homer. The young people who were hailed as the last miracle of this era. Fully supporting their experiment, witnessing firsthand the revolutionary members who were destined to be recorded in history. In that moment, everything turned to ashes and was devoured by the spreading orange sun. Even the bodies couldn't exist anymore, as the infinite orange light instantly destroyed the entire underground magical experiment ground, lifting hundreds of meters of rock layers and creating a huge mushroom cloud in this world. The resulting high temperature and shock wave evaporated everything within a few kilometers. Not even the Duke Mage Tower, which was located 10 kilometers away, could escape. It collapsed with less than 10 seconds of support. Duke, who was observing the experiment with a magic mirror, was blown away. If it weren't for the magic shield supported by the magic star, he would probably have suffered the same fate as his student, Homer. The earth mourned, the sky trembled. In the moment when the small sun bloomed on the ground, everyone lost their sight and hearing. Within a 10-kilometer radius, only Duke survived, while the other owners of the Wizard Towers, without the magical crown called the God Weapon, were not protected. The Wizard Towers were destroyed, and they lost their lives in the Yellow Spring. Even Duke, who survived, was penetrated by invisible particles of terror and suffered irreversible fatal injuries within a minute. All of this happened in less than a minute. The location of the underground experimental site now remained as a huge hollow. The edges of the hollow were filled with burnt glass like powder. People couldn't even find any artifacts belonging to those wizards here. Duke remained in a coma for the next 3 days. His eardrums were shattered by terrifying sound waves. If it wasn't for the protection of the God Weapon, he would not have been able to endure these 3 nightmare-like days and nights. The main members of the reformist faction were completely wiped out. In the end, the generation of miracles, before they could step onto their own stage in history, perished along with this nuclear explosion. The traditional faction, originally at a disadvantage, turned the tables and gained an absolute majority in the council. Even the neutral wizards sided with them one after another. Everyone felt a deep terror in their hearts about the accident caused by the ignition device. According to the later estimated data, this experimental accident caused the heaviest casualties for the Mage Council since the Divine Era and the Dragon War. The 2nd seat, 5th seat, 6th seat, 7th seat, 10th seat, 11th seat, and 12th seat of the Red Robe Council were all buried in the testing ground, with the oldest being 300 years old and the youngest only 16 years old. Known as the last miracle generation, entrusted with the future by countless people, even though they could accept the failure of this experiment, no one survived. After the accident, some insisted on continuing their research and even proposed the need for larger uninhabited areas to prevent similar accidents. If the explosion only resulted in this, perhaps this research would continue. Even though they lost the last miracle generation, there are still people who want to fulfill their unfinished wishes and continue on the path called science. It wasn't until the mages discovered that after the nuclear explosion, all the animals and plants within hundreds of kilometers began to undergo terrifying and distorted mutations. Some animals developed horrifying tumors on their bodies, and herbivores began to attack humans. Plants grew organs that they shouldn't have and showed signs of continuing mutation. After the nuclear explosion, something even more terrifying than direct casualties appeared, mutations that couldn't be reversed even with magic. Many wizards who were initially affected by the aftermath of the explosion didn't die immediately but instead perished one by one over the next 100 days. Even Duke, the highest leader of the Red Robe Council with the protection of the magic star, couldn't escape this disaster. In the end, he had no choice but to resort to forbidden methods in order to survive. From then on, no one dared to restart nuclear experiments because most of the wizards who wanted to do so had died. The Red Robe Council suffered the loss of an entire generation of elites and over half of its members. The main reformists and neutral factions were almost completely wiped out. Ironically, the traditionalists were excluded from this experimental ignition because the reformists and neutrals joined forces. In order to prevent them from sabotaging this crucial experiment, several traditionalist council members weren't even allowed to enter the mountain range where the testing site was located. This actually kept them away from the accident. As the only member of the council who survived the nuclear accident, Duke was forced to make a difficult decision, abandoning the study of this power. Most of the technical information remained, but no one could understand what the data represented anymore. Homer's intelligence was a miracle that spanned across eras. Without him and the efforts of the last generation of miracle workers, the creation of the ignition device would be impossible. After losing Homer and the last generation of miracles, the Red Robe Council no longer had the power to carry out experiments of this scale. Two well-built igniters were buried by him in a place known only to him. The Red Robe Council completely abandoned the path represented by nuclear explosions and instead began to study the mysterious phenomena of the underground cemetery. The remaining few reformists were also unable to restart nuclear explosion experiments and began to evolve in a different direction, continuing Homer's legacy and paving the way for science. Chapter 12:18 Over time, Duke never expected that after thousands of years, someone would bring him the same feeling he had when he first met Homer. There was no magical aura on him, and even his face had started to show signs of aging, but the brilliance in his eyes was as awe-inspiring as it was in Homer's time. It was the glow of wisdom, the vision that transcended time. His name was Poincare, a descendant who initially believed in Homer's scientific path and unwaveringly chose to carry on the legacy left by the descendants who stayed on the surface. Now, the seed has taken root and grown into a towering tree. So, this is the real nuclear explosion. Igniter, the switch that creates infinite energy. Nuclear explosion is not a forbidden curse, but a scientific phenomenon, the power of the fundamental matter. After understanding everything that happened back then, Poincare suddenly realized. This is the truth of everything. A nuclear explosion is not a forbidden curse cast by a warlock, but a weapon of science, powerful enough to destroy everything, the ultimate weapon. It is only natural for the Empire's titled machine to lose. This is advanced technology beyond titled machine, a secret technology that should be used to create miniature suns. That theory now only exists as some vague concepts in Poincare's imagination. Unexpectedly, even in the divine era, pioneers had already created this kind of miracle with their own hands. It's just a pity that they greatly underestimated the destructive power of this technology and relied too much on the experience of magic. They even attempted to bind this power with magic circles. It was the limitation of the times. They didn't realize how difficult it was to create a miniature sun and how far-fetched it was to try to control the power of the sun. But their method was correct, Poincare could be sure of that. I will continue their research. The power of a nuclear explosion will surely belong to humans. Without any hesitation, Poincare immediately decided to take up the flag of Homer and the last miracle generation, completing their unfinished dream. Then, everything is up to you. I have lost my creativity and imagination. As the price of immortality, maybe soon even my emotions will disappear. Duke told Poirot the hiding place of the ignition device and all of Homer's research materials, and the fire in his eyes began to flicker. The immortality of a lich has a cost, and they, who send their phylactery into the bonfire, essentially become ashes. It is indeed possible for one to become a lich and achieve immortality, but all emotions will gradually disappear, along with the uniquely human ability to create and imagine. Even though they naturally acquire astronomical knowledge after experiencing long periods of time, it remains only stored like a library, without the ability to possess human inspiration. This is not the perfect immortality that the wizards seek. Transforming into a lich, a wizard can repeat experiments countless times, but loses the ability to create miracles. Therefore, liches can exist as the leaders of the undead army, but they can never again become the seeds that change the world. The future belongs to the living, and the deceased who should have long been asleep only escape the laws of nature in a twisted manner, forever trapped in the gaps between the past and the present. And it is this kind of power that doesn't belong to the council of red-robed wizards, but rather the privilege of the underground cemetery. The mysterious king of undead shows a higher level of mystery than Homer's scientific path. Whether the scientific or mysterious side is more suitable for Sia's world, Duke can no longer answer this question, and has lost the ability to find an answer. Is this the price of immortality? Poirot looked at his ancestors who had survived in the underground cemetery until now. Even if they had survived in such a state, they had created some kind of miracle. This way of immortal existence is worth studying. No. It is the price of the weak. We lost to the king of undead. That's why we have to pay such a price. The strong have the privilege to dominate everything, and this is a rule that will never change. We, obedient to this rule, pledge allegiance to the king of undead. I didn't betray the great king. Witness with me the strongest existence on the mysterious side, entrusted with all the legacy left by Homer to Poirot. Duke fulfilled his final wish, as he could feel that his time was running out. This obsession, combined with the protection of the magic star, is the most important reason why his emotions didn't dissipate after being transformed into a lich. When Poirot took over this legacy, his obsession disappeared, and something that had been supporting him also disappeared. Crack. Something invisible seemed to start cracking little by little within his body. The last remnants of the soul fire that had been formed over a long period of time slowly dissipated, and the soul fire in Duke's eye sockets quietly shrank. Soon, there was no longer any trace of an attachment emanating from Duke that made Poirot feel somewhat bound. He coldly glanced at Poirot, like the other liches hovering around the venue, and began to move in a regular pattern. In that moment, Poirot knew that the speaker Duke, who had just talked to him, had forever disappeared, along with the secrets of the divine era and the origin of nuclear explosions, the biggest catastrophe humanity had ever experienced. What now existed here were undead beings who had endured millions of years, with only the magical star emblems on their chests, without any connection between the two. Goodbye. Speaker. Poirot gently bowed to the departing lich, showing respect for the departed pioneers. The speaker, dressed in red robes, had done everything he could, but unfortunately, the science of that era had come to a halt after losing Homer and the last generation of miracles. Whether it was Homer or the speaker Duke, they were the people who made choices in that era. There is no right or wrong, only mistakes made by them, limited by their era, mistakes that all the people in that era would make. The path of science inevitably requires paying the price of such mistakes. They were the pioneers, and now their legacy will be inherited by Poirot and the scholars. In an era without magic, science is the truth. Countless new formulas have already emerged in Poirot's mind. In the blurry mist, Poirot saw the truth, the essence that symbolizes the beauty of matter. At the top of the Tower of Babylon, a magical ladder was descending. The king of undead, wearing pitch-black armor and exuding the aura of ruling the world, appeared before the representatives of all the powers in Sia's world. The king has returned. Chapter 12:19. At that moment, all eyes were focused on the figure slowly descending from the Babylon Sky Tower. That was the strongest legend of the divine era. It was a king whose brilliance could not be extinguished, even if buried in the shadows of history by humans. The only one recognized by the dragon race, holder of the continental crown. Once upon a time, all the kings from the divine era had dreams of becoming the recognized ruler of a unique continent. He didn't claim the title of king, no king dared to call themselves the ruler of the continent. Even the powerful red-robed mages only formed a council and never declared themselves the king of the continent. Because the symbol of the absolute ruler, the continental crown, has always been kept in the underground cemetery. It is the only fantasy manifestation in this world that gives the concept of continent rulership, proof of the crown's status. At this moment, that crown is placed on top of that figure's head, releasing the long-awaited aura of a king. The king of undead. The ruler of countless immortal armies, the strongest king ever recorded in the history of the continent. Warlock. Mage. Golden human. Heavenly beings. His identity has many mysterious aspects, but with the resurrection of the underground cemetery, the great achievements he accomplished are once again known to mankind. Defeated the immortal king of the dragon race. The eternal and immortal ruler of Netherworld's magic. Countless years have passed, even the dragon race has disappeared during the era of declining magical tides, but this most powerful immortal king is born again from the underground cemetery. The Tower of Babel in Babylon rises from the ground, proudly standing in the center of the mountains, as if going to pierce the steel sky of this world. This is the birthplace of humanity, the center of the continent, and the cradle of all civilizations in Sia's world. Even Ludwig XII, the ruler of the Leviathan Empire, the strongest military power on the continent, couldn't help but tremble when he saw that dark figure. It was the instinctual fear and tremor in the face of an immortal king whose power far exceeded imagination. This is the mysterious side, the strongest. Imperial sage Poicaré took a deep breath. Impossible to win, even if all the titled machines of the empire are still there, and attack together, they are no match for this dark figure. The staircase formed by condensed white bones symbolizes the mysterious power at the highest point of this world, carrying the unique aura of the underworld, surpassing the limits of life and death. Without witnessing this power firsthand, one cannot understand the greatness of the King of Undead. Only such a strong individual can make the Dragon Clan, which once ruled the continent from the top of the world pyramid, relinquish its dominance. Undead liches wearing red robes floated in the air, automatically arranging themselves below the bone staircase. Stretching their long-decayed hands, the spells from the netherworld echoed in the air. Heading towards the realm of the underworld. Butterflies of the underworld dance. Welcome, the arrival of our king. The ground shook violently as a brand new bone altar emerged from the ground, casting shadows from another world. The bones that formed the altar belonged to humans, giants, and even the towering dragon race. The throne, constructed from bones, stood empty, waiting for its rightful owner to arrive. Ah, it's really ugly. Phyllis, walking up the stairs, couldn't help but criticize the horribly bad aesthetic of the throne. Why couldn't they have a fairy-style altar adorned with flowers and jewels? Even though the underground cemetery had these resources, why did they have to use this bone altar that was so bone-chilling to look at? This was already arranged. Great King. Kingdom Shield furrowed his brows as well, but this was the arrangement made by the late King of Undead. Phyllis wanted to arrange things the way she wanted, with gemstones and flowers. A dreamy fairy-style altar could also be done, but now every resource in the underground cemetery was being used for survival. On top of that, this bone altar cost the late King of Undead a great deal of effort. It would be a waste not to use it. The previous generation really had a fondness for theme of death. Elphilus found the late king of undead's hobbies to be quite niche. As an endless god's domain and a top architect and designer, 10 Leaves Alliance's elite was capable of independently completing a miracle-level structure like the Babylon Sky Tower. Yet, their personal preference was so horrifying. He started building his own grave while he was still alive. This obsession is beyond help. Even though he is alive, he pretends to be dead all day. This cursed armor called the King of Undead cannot be taken off without a special command. What has this architect encountered in this world? One must have great respect for death in order to control it. Compared to Elphilus, Kingdom's Shield, the highest military leader of the underground cemetery, knew the personality of the previous King of Undead better. He was a perfect scholar, a polite and righteous gentleman, especially focused on the study of magic. If it weren't for the war between humans and the Dragon Clan over the control of the continent, he could have spent his whole life in his underground laboratory. For the military attack plan against the Dragon Clan, the Black Iron Giant was sent to charge head-on, while the Emerald Sea Dragon Beast harassed and attacked the enemy's logistical supply lines in the rear sea area. The Opera House Phantom used their unique abilities to expand the undead army and crush the morale of the Dragon Clan. All these plans came from the hands of Kingdom's Shield. Only she, who could control the Rift Space Dragon and fly tens of thousands of meters high, could lay out such a precise strategy on the entire continent. She accumulated decisive advantages from small victories and ultimately defeated the powerful Leviathan faction. In the end, the Dragon Clan didn't know where they lost. Of course, all of this was built upon the previous King of Undead's use of the power of death. It was his creation of the 4 guardians of the underground cemetery that made it possible for the human race to turn the tables. Without the King of Undead's technology and power, even with Kingdom's Shield strategies and plans, they would be meaningless. The dragon race has always ruled the world with absolute power at the top of this world's pyramid, rather than strategies and plans. So-called tactics can only compensate for disadvantages, but cannot overcome absolute advantages. The emergence of 4 ancient weapons that transcend time is the most important factor in humans pushing back the dragon race, and among them, the power of the Rift Space Dragon and the Opera House Phantom is the most vital. The Rift Space Dragon, soaring tens of thousands of meters above, can observe all the military arrangements on the entire continent. The Opera House Phantom, causing our own army to increase in number with each battle, sets the tone for the entire war. This moment, this world has been waiting for a long time. Our king, step onto the stage. Chapter 1220 To become the ruler of the continent was something that the King of Undead from the previous reign could achieve anytime and anywhere. The Dragon Clan used these 7 precious gemstones, the most valuable in the world, to create the crown for the king. It symbolized the Dragon Clan's greatest masterpiece and served as proof of their alliance. The existence of the Black Iron Giant, Emerald Sea Dragon Beast, Opera House Phantom, and Rift Space Dragon, 4 war weapons, completely overwhelmed the proud Dragon Clan. This made the Dragon Clan acknowledge that the King of Undead possessed the power and qualification to become the ruler of the continent. Yes, the Dragon Clan didn't surrender to humans. Humans were deluded, thinking that they had defeated the superior Dragon Clan with their own strength. It was nothing but a big joke. Throughout, the Dragon Clan recognized that the ruler of the continent, the one who demonstrated control over Netherworld's power and revived the golden bloodline of Su, was not a human. Whether he was a human or not was highly doubtful. Looking at the level of manipulation of Netherworld's power exhibited, it was the only one in the whole Sia's world. It is acceptable to lose to such a formidable opponent, rather than losing to insignificant humans. The Continental Crown represents the rules recognized by the entire world, crafted by the united power of the Dragon Clan. It symbolizes the peace treaty that brought an end to this war. The king of undead proved that he had the ability to sit on equal footing with the entire dragon race, so the dragons voluntarily withdrew from the struggle for dominance over the continent and returned to their place of origin. The Leviathan faction no longer sought the kingdom's power on the continent. Even if the dragon race disappeared millions of years later, the pillars of the Mermaid clan and Lamia clan of the Leviathan faction still honored this ancient alliance. Compared to humans who deliberately erased the King of Undead's contributions from history, the monsters of the Leviathan faction were truly honest. At that time, the kingdom's shield had already envisioned a glorious future for the underground cemetery. The bone altar and the ceremony from the tower to the underground were prepared at that time. However, the King of Undead eventually gave up everything. Because his friends, his lovers, and his benefactors all perished in that war. It was the final elegy for the golden ancient people, who symbolized the origin of humanity. They perhaps sensed the arrival of their own demise and led the humans in a war against the dragon race. In order to create a future for humanity, they fearlessly charged forward, bravely sacrificing their lives on the battlefield. The golden ancient people became an eternal legend from that moment on. With the war concluded, the King of Undead, who should have naturally become the king of the continent, ultimately didn't hold the crowning ceremony that was supposed to take place. Because he wanted to wait for someone, he wanted the person who would witness this ceremony. The person he loved, he wanted to walk hand in hand with, the person who would become the princess. Tell him what it means to be human, the person who is alive. Everything is gone. Without all of you on this throne, what use is it to me? You deceivers, who said the future was mine, yet each of you left one by one. I don't want such a future. I am willing to accompany all of you to rest in the underground cemetery, and dedicate my last power to the person who will continue my mission in the future. Offer everything I have as a sacrifice to this tower that will lead to the stars. That is everyone's wish, the reason why I strive. I want to change the world, save the world. I don't need to be a king, my mission is already complete. The previous king was so hopeful. So, please carry on his will, become our king. Kingdom's shield whispered, telling the undying persistence of the previous king of undead before he vanished. Perhaps, he wasn't a qualified king, never possessing the grace and magnanimity of a king. He had originally longed to walk together with the person he loved, even if they weren't very wealthy, without any desire to conquer the world. He came to this world because of a mission, but from the very beginning, things went wrong, and he had to become a part of this world. And it was exactly like this, he gained friends, benefactors, and even a lover, something he had never experienced during his researcher days, and he began to genuinely like this world. He loves this world and wants to change it. His original task has now become a heartfelt mission, prepared to spend thousands or even tens of thousands of years to complete this mission. He built a tower that reaches the stars for this world, freeing it from the curse of Leviathan. He never wanted to become a ruler, but merely a dedicated and focused scholar. The fact that he comes from the stars is not a secret to the other golden humans. It is because of this that the last golden ancient people value him so much and entrust the future of the world to him. Kingdom's Shield is the only person in the underground cemetery who knows the truth about the previous king of undead. She is the best assistant prepared by the previous king of undead for his successor, and the highest military commander of the underground cemetery. I know, he has already done very well, even better than I imagined. Elphyllis looked at the half-completed Babylon Sky Tower beside her. It is a miracle that only a few geniuses in the endless gods domain can build. Every builder of a star tower will be recorded in history, the highest honor for an architect. When Elphyllis arrived in this world, she originally thought she would inherit a mess. But she didn't expect the previous king of undead, who was a former researcher of the Ten Leaves Alliance, had already pushed the construction progress of Babylon Sky Tower to over 50%. The entire military power of the underground cemetery, even the crown on her head, are his legacy. If it wasn't for the world's limited resources, Elphilas might not have been needed. He could have built the Star Tower by himself and created a bridge to the stars. Right now, Elphilas not only inherited his father's will, but also his mission in this world. So, I will become the king of this world. Walking down the stairs of bones, Elphilas took step by step towards the already built bone altar, stepping onto the center of the altar once again. Buzz! 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 The bone altar, dormant for millions of years and waiting for the same amount of time, released a chilling aura. On the altar, an endless and eerie deathly energy began to emerge. It was the crystallization of the power of the netherworld and a treasure intentionally brought into Sia's world by the former king of undead. The sky in Sia's world was imprisoned, rejecting any external life from entering. Only these crystals of deathly energy, devoid of any living essence, were eventually brought into this world by the researchers. I declare. A slightly deep voice began to echo amid the mountains. Chapter 12:21 I will become the ruler of this continent. A simple sentence, delayed by thousands of years. Originally spoken by the hero recognized by the dragon clan, who should have ended the war between humans and dragons, but was said only now. After millions of years, the vacant throne that had been prepared but never appeared before the people, along with the crown symbolizing the continent's monarchy, finally arrived at the moment of fulfilling its mission. On the throne of white bones, the armrests formed by the dragon's skull emitted a breathtaking dragon roar. On Elphilas's crown, 7 of the world's most perfect gems released different lights of precious stones. The throne of white bones. Continental crown. This is the moment when the 21st legendary god weapon was born in the history of the continent, witnessing the name of the king of undead. The throne built by ethereal white bones can only be sat on by the king of undead. It is the embodiment of Netherworld's power. The crown symbolizing absolute royal authority belongs only to the kings recognized by the World Covenant. A huge cloak shadow appears behind the bone throne, staring at all living beings with a cold and inhuman gaze. In that instant, whether they were humans or creatures from the Leviathan faction, they all felt the gaze from Netherworld. The king of undead who transcends life and death, crossing the boundaries of life, finally takes the crucial step and starts to gather their own legendary name. This is also the most important reward of Elphilas's mission, legendary status. As the successor of the previous the king of undead, she has gained the recognition of the bone throne and the continental crown. The king of Sia's world and the messenger of Netherworld, both titles are now in her hands. Even if she leaves Sia's world, the legend will not end. As long as the people of Sia's world remember this moment, it means that Elphilas's legendary name is silently being forged. This kind of fame is an honor for heroes ranked high and is proof of their epicness, but it doesn't directly increase their strength. But when reaching the step of challenging the legend ranked as a hero ranked, this fame becomes a crucial element. Hero ranked without enough fame and wanting to take the final step can be considered wishful thinking unless you are a fantasy creature that is naturally favored by the heavens and the earth. The legend represented by the legend ranked is the influence on the world and the legacy left behind. Gods, who achieve their legendary name through belief, will not completely disappear as long as people still have faith in them. Fantasy creatures, naturally loved by the rules of the heavens and the earth, coexist with the world, roam the stars without restrictions, and are species even the gods envy and fear. For human heroes to surpass the limitations of their species and enter this field, they must have their own legend. In different gods' domains, different occupations and cultivation methods have different paths to becoming legendary. But without exception, all these paths are extremely difficult, and to step into a higher field, higher fame is required. The highest achievement accomplished by the 3 most powerful beings in the sky sword of the gods' domain of the sky is the divine slaying, representing the concept that even gods can be killed. This is a legend that can only be achieved at the 9th rank. Battle God, Chess Saint, Real Person, Sage, are all titles exclusive to the rank of legends, not belonging to hero ranked. For Miss Elphilis, the heiress of the 10 Leaves Alliance, wealth and the path to advancing her cultivation are not lacking. The only thing she can't easily obtain is a legend degree. This is a mysterious element that must be sincerely obtained from people's hearts and recognized by the rules of the world. Legend degree obtained with money will also be bound by money along the path of legends. Legend degree obtained through violence will also lead the legend ranked field towards killing and destruction. The path of legends is closely related to the fate you choose and is also the most reflective of the essence. Just like the position possessed by deities or the laws symbolized by fantasy species, if there is a certain legend, then what appears in the end of hero ranked will lead to the doors of that kind of legend. This principle is a secret jointly kept by all the major forces in the Endless Gods domain. False legends cannot construct a real path of legends unless your lies are powerful enough to deceive even the world. Elphilis took on this task because she truly wanted to fulfill the previous generation's desire to change the world and become the new king of undead. She chose the legendary path of mystery and wisdom for herself. The king of Sia's world and the apostle of Netherworld could help her gain the legendary factors of mystery, so she believed that she was destined to complete the task of changing Sia's world. The delayed coronation ceremony of the king, which had been postponed for thousands of years, granted Elphilis the highest level of legend in this world. Even though Sia's world was just a remote small god's domain where both mystery and science were still in a primitive state, it had 2 beings ranked as legends. People believed that creator god Sword Sia sacrificed herself and became the spark of civilization and wisdom in this world. The defeated sky beast transformed into mountains, oceans, and the foundation of this world. Elphilis knew that they had underestimated the existence of legends. With the legendary factors left by creator gods Sword Sia and the sky beast in this world, as long as they were given enough time, their resurrection was almost inevitable. The only ones who can kill someone of the legend ranked are others of the same rank. The number of them doesn't matter in front of the legend ranked. Even though it may seem like both sides are equally wounded, as long as the names Sia and Leviathan continue to be spoken on this land, these 2 beings will inevitably return. The celestial barrier that traps the intelligent beings of this world is the remaining will of the legend ranked. Even the 10 Leaves Alliance finds it to be a challenging problem. Because of the existence of this barrier, the coordinates of the entire Sia's world are shrouded in mist. Even the legend ranked of the 10 Leaves Alliance cannot pinpoint the location here. They can only rely on occasional messages from the King of Undead, who crossed through a crack into this world a long time ago, to track the coordinates of Sia's world. At this moment, Elphilis puts on the crown symbolizing the ruler of the continent and sits on the bone throne reserved for Netherworld apostles. It means she has finally taken that crucial step. With the support of the entire alliance, the 10 Leaves Alliance began preparations to attain the name of the legend ranked while their young miss was still at the hero rank. Boom! A silver-white figure descends from the sky, standing tall at 40 meters in front of the Babylon Sky Tower, gazing at the King of Undead seated on the throne. The boy looks at his childhood sweetheart, his eyes filled with tenderness. Chapter 12:22 Boom. The tall black iron giant, over 50 meters high, came rushing out from among the mountains. It raised its hands in a triumphant pose, showing off its strong figure. The figure of the Emerald Sea Dragon beast emerged from a nearby river, surrounded by mist. The knights of the Leviathan Empire were immediately awestruck by its blue scales. It was this ancient weapon that shattered the spirits of the Leviathan Empire's knights. Even now, many people tremble involuntarily when they see the Emerald Sea Dragon beast. It is an instinctive reaction. From the sky came a clear and resounding roar of a dragon. The ruler of the sky, the Rift Space Dragon, rarely descended to lower altitudes. The 7-layered electric ring emitted a current that made the entire sky tremble. Finally, even the most mysterious ancient weapon, the Opera House Phantom, which rarely appeared in front of the world, and even stayed hidden in the underground cemetery during the Dragon War, revealed part of its form. It wore a white mask enveloped in a huge black mist, with countless shadows of the dead entwined around it. No one could count how many faces were on that mask. Even a wise mathematician like Poincare couldn't calculate the number of faces on that mask, because the vast white opera mask was constantly changing. They symbolized the 4 ancient weapons that are the ultimate core of the underground cemetery: land, sea, air, and the Legion of Death, all at the same time. And there was also an additional mysterious guardian from Sia's world. It was a big silver giant that had defeated the Black Iron Giant and the Emerald Sea Dragon Beast. These are the highest achievements of the Divine Era, the most powerful weapons from the mysterious side. Poincare looked at 5 different ancient weapons. These weapons had a terrifying power that modern weapons didn't possess. Each one of them could single-handedly oppress an entire country, especially the Opera House Phantom and the Rift Space Dragon. Even the Leviathan Empire didn't have any information on these 2 ancient weapons. The titled machine, developed with the power of science, was far beyond the reach of even the strongest Black King. However, if one could master the power of nuclear explosions, one could possibly fight back. Poincare closed his eyes and started absorbing and calculating all the information he had obtained from Speaker Duke. It was inevitable for Homer and the last generation of miracles to fail. They failed to truly realize the power of science and instead focused on studying it through magic, which led to that fatal mistake. Poincare and the new generation of scholars were different because they didn't possess any magical abilities. Scholars and alchemic warlocks of this era had a higher understanding of the essence of materials. Therefore, when Poincare obtained the information on the nuclear explosion that caused the complete destruction of the first magic armored legion, he was astonished. That kind of power was simply impossible to be wielded by a human body, not even a titled machine could handle it. If someone could use the power of such a nuclear explosion with a human body, they wouldn't be hero-ranked, but a true god. Long live our king! The Black Iron Giant took the lead and raised its right fist, unleashing a powerful punch infused with the force of the Earth's veins towards the sky. A black pillar of light shot up into the sky. It was the Black Iron Giant's heartfelt joy, a blessing to the King of Undead. The Emerald Sea Dragon Beast coiled its body and its repaired head and body regained its original shine. It lifted its head and spewed out a blue water wave. The transformed water curtain heavenly splendor appeared again, countless aquamarine dots floating in the sky, a beautiful sight to behold. Buzz! Buzz! The Rift Space Dragon gracefully glided through the sky, and its tail's electric ring began to glow. With a burst of acceleration, golden lightning spread layer by layer in the sky, blending with the aquamarine particles, forming a magnificent sea of light. Law! The huge white opera mask opened its mouth and sang a song that seemed to melt souls. It was a song from the netherworld, capable of making people forget all their worries and resist the temptation of death. Butterflies of the underworld fly. The gates of yellow spring are open. Come, the sighing walls have opened, and paradise awaits you. As Yunshi watched the 4 ancient weapons opening their mouths, he hesitated for a moment but finally made up his mind. Since Elphilus didn't know his true identity, Yunshi decided to reveal his feelings a little bit. At that time, he hadn't properly answered Elphilus. Can you see the beautiful and azure sky? On the other side of the clouds, it feels like it's calling out to me, swaying and extending towards an endless world. That is my longing, in the scenery of a summer afternoon. The beautiful sky sometimes rains too. That is also my longing, wanting to tell you my feelings. Your smile is in the palm of my hand, bearing colorful fruits. Let that rainbow be our memory. Gentle golden light overflows from the world. You are the princess in my heart, forever so beautiful, shining like a gem. Silver-white radiance appears around the faceless god, transforming into gemstones and revealing words, finally rising up to dance with the sky and lightning. Yunshi learned everything about gemstones from Elphyllis, because the school didn't teach knowledge about luxury items like that. Yunshi couldn't afford any of the gemstones in Elphyllis's house, even though she always smiled and said they could be his if he wanted. He just had to do one thing. What is that one thing? Curious, young Yunshi always asked the knowledgeable young lady of the jewelry store in his mind. She always seemed so mature and gentle to him, never giving him a hard time. She was the one who understood him best among the 4 childhood friends. Well, it's a very, very difficult thing. But for little she, it's a very, very simple thing. I just can't let you know. Every time they talked about this topic, Elphyllis's face would blush slightly and her eyes would look at Yunshi, leaving him puzzled. Not letting me know and still calling it simple. For young Yunshi, trying to understand this question was even more difficult than the most challenging question in his textbooks, 100 times harder. Even now, Yunshi still doesn't know why Elphyllis used to speak and then stop herself. However, now Yunshi finally gathered the courage to offer his blessings to the young lady who once felt unreachable in his heart. That was a gift for the king's birth. Chapter 12:23 That was the most beautiful flower in the world. That was a gem that shone forever. In Yunshi's eyes, it was an unforgettable beautiful memory. Even if far away from his hometown and unable to return to that ordinary small town, Elphyllis's face would forever be etched in the young boy's heart. In Sia's lonely world, the figure currently sitting on the throne was the person he was most familiar with in this world. Congratulations, Elphyllis. Feeling Yunshi's gaze, Elphyllis looked at the silver giant that stood an impressive 40 meters tall with some confusion. Then, the entire Babylon Sky Tower began to emit a sort of light that seemed to pierce through the entire sky. This is when Sia's world recognized the King of Undead's continental crown, and the sign of the immense power of the world began to gather. Elphyllis could feel that the completion progress of the Babylon Sky Tower, which was originally lacking a large amount of resources and only at around 70%, was continuously rising. 71%, 72%, 75%. It kept soaring until 80%, and then this rapid growth slowed down. Even the architect who designed the Babylon Sky Tower, the King of Undead, probably didn't expect such special treatment when officially becoming the king of the continent. It looks like it should be completed within a week. Elphyllis joyfully watched as the progress of the Babylon Sky Tower continued to slowly rise. The blessing of the world's power has incredible effects. She could feel that the vague will of this world also wanted to connect to a broader starry sky, but it has always been hindered by something. Now, it seems that the obstructing force has weakened quite a bit. With the blessing of the world's power and the constant collection of resources by the army of the undead sent out for 24 hours, the construction progress of Babylon Sky Tower can be greatly advanced. In this way, conquering the world becomes meaningful. Elphyllis felt the power of the world filling the crown and finally breathed a sigh of relief. This throne rightfully belongs to the greatest ruler. Kingdom's Shield looked pleased as Elphyllis finally ascended to become the king of the land, then glanced at the silver giant who blessed the birth of the new ruler. It's no wonder she's the princess of the 10 Leaves Alliance. Her gracefulness can easily inspire others. She could feel the silver giant, who was once a formidable enemy, sincerely offering their heartfelt blessings to Elphyllis. Maybe it's love. Kingdom's Shield, who dedicated everything to training, never quite understood this kind of feeling. Now, he had a somewhat uncertain guess. No matter what, from this day on, the world will turn to a new page. When Babylon Sky Tower is completed, it will be the moment when the long-held wishes of all the wise beings in the world come true. Surely, everyone looks forward to such a future, right? Ludwig XII stared blankly at the king of undead sitting on the bone throne, his nails digging deep into his palm. Especially that crown with 7 precious jewels on top, which almost made him unable to see anything else. That's mine, my belongings. I am the rightful ruler who should wear that crown, the strongest imperial emperor of the continent. The goal that even the rebellious royal family wanted to achieve, which the ancestors had been striving for generations, to conquer the world and eternally inscribe the name of the Leviathan Empire in history, he was just one step away from it. Why did it turn out like this? Damned nuclear explosion. Damned silver giant. Damned king of undead. He had had enough, it was as if fate was mocking him cruelly. Will everything I've sacrificed, including my best friend, my first love whom I secretly adored, and marrying a noblewoman I don't love, all be in vain today? Ludwig XII's heart was consumed by strong regret and unwillingness, much like a venomous snake. He yearned for the power to destroy and crush everything, to completely reverse this unfair fate and set everything back on track. He is the emperor of the Leviathan Empire, the most powerful military nation on the continent. He carries the mission to unify the continent and become a great ruler, driving science as the mainstream of this era. Why does everyone have a problem with him one by one? You monsters should have died during the divine era. Why are you all emerging from unknown places only now? The greatest ruler in human history is not creatures like you, but someone who adapts to the trends of the era like me, who is about to ascend in this era. It's all mine, no one can take it away. Ludwig XII looked enviously at the crown symbolizing continental supremacy, which was the god weapon imbued with the concept of a continental king. Only the person who wore that crown was qualified to truly call themselves the king of the continent. This is mine. No matter what the cost, I must snatch it away. Do you want it? Whispered from an unknown source, entwining within Ludwig XII's increasingly tainted soul. This insane, unwilling, and desire-filled soul is Abyss's favorite. Together with the cracks opened by star-hunting dragon Mumu Narabel from the distant starry sky, one of the incarnations of the Abyss will, which accidentally descended upon this world, finally began its erosion of this world. It is the fragmented will of the evil god that chased after Naya's imprint and came to this world. Its name is Ada, an indescribable existence. The name Ada symbolizes complete and chaotic evil, which is also a characteristic of Naya's faction. Naya is the most powerful evil among them, but there are also many other evils. Old gods, that's how many people refer to these strange beings born from the depths of the abyss. They are one of the most terrifying existences in the endless gods domain. It's you. Ludwig XII tightened his hands and a few dark particles appeared in his eyes. He only found out about the news of an underground sect called Ada appearing in the army not long ago, and they were the ones who approached him first. Unlike the previous insignificant organizations led by ambitious individuals with at most a half-hearted warlock bloodline, this underground sect that worships Ada displayed true extraordinary powers. In less than a month, this underground sect, led by the younger generation in the army, developed thousands of followers, and the trend is growing stronger. Ludwig XII, the Imperial Emperor, originally thought this would be just another trickster underground sect like before. However, the initiator of this sect, Morris, provided him with a large number of elite-level magic armored knights, making Ludwig reevaluate them. Chapter 1224. In order to expand the military power of the Leviathan Empire and in desperate need of new hero-ranked knights, Ludwig XII had no choice but to turn a blind eye to the existence of this underground sect, giving them tacit approval. To deal with the sudden resurrection of Su, the king of undead, regardless of what this Ada thing is, as long as it can be used, it's good enough. On the West Continent, there are also churches that worship deities. Whether it's a black cat or a white cat, as long as it can be useful, it's a good cat. On one hand, the emperor is enthusiastically assisting his teacher, Imperial Sage Poicaré, in developing powerful scientific weapons. On the other hand, he is making deals with an unknown underground church. This is what the emperor does. Only children worry about right and wrong, the emperor only needs to consider his own interest. Besides, this church hasn't done anything outrageous like blood sacrifice. They're just expanding their membership. For the Leviathan Empire, which needs good fighters, this is a tempting offer that is hard to refuse. Even Imperial Sage Poicaré doesn't know that Ludwig XII himself is secretly also serving as the high priest of an underground sect called the Black God Order. This was part of the deal he made with the founder of the church, Morris. Ludwig XII doesn't really care about the position of high priest. It's just a symbolic title. As long as he can control the underground church, that's all he needs. For humans living in a period of declining magic, their faith is weak, let alone their vigilance towards unknown entities. In this world, no one besides the deep-sea race has experience dealing with these evil gods. Unfortunately, Ludwig XII is one of the guinea pigs, and he has no idea how dangerous it is. Do you have any solution, Morris? Ludwig XII has some fondness for this hero-ranked knight who comes from a noble background. If the Black Emperor hadn't already promised certain powerful nobles to endorse their candidates, he might have actually given the most powerful titled machine to Morris. To the Emperor, no matter how powerful a weapon is, it's still just a weapon. As long as it can unleash its power effectively, he doesn't care who uses it. From his perspective, Morris had a strong loyalty to the Empire and was a genius representing the emerging power of the Empire. This moment was already prepared for. No matter who sits on that throne, they are destined to die. Morris's voice became particularly gloomy, jealousy driving him mad. Like the king, he also wanted the person on the throne to die. Everything originated from the great will of the abyss. This world has already caught the attention of Ada, and is destined to slide into the endless abyss. No one can stop this fate. Only by merging with the abyss can this world experience a rebirth. Even if Sia and Leviathan are resurrected at the same time, they cannot stop this fate. The moment Ada arrives, this once secluded world, with no gods or the legend ranked, is destined to become prey to the abyss. And Morris, the apostle of the abyss, is the chosen one to complete this task. Everything is for the great Ada. Well, it seems like there is another mission for Ada. She is searching for the trace of a certain target, but this mission is a long-term one, so there is no need to hurry. Once he drags this world into the abyss, he can receive gifts from the will of the abyss and open the doors to the legend ranked. Destroying the world is the fastest way for the apostles of the abyss to advance to the legend ranked, no doubt about it. Listening to the cries of an entire world being devoured by the abyss is the supreme joy of the apostles of the abyss. This world doesn't need that kind of ruler. Only despair and darkness are the future of this world. In an underground cave about 10 kilometers away from Babylon's Sky Tower, thousands of members of the Black God Order gather and kneel on the ground, praying to the apostles of the abyss. Ada! 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 The enthusiastic voice echoed among these believers, all of whom were knights empowered by the abyss, and a few awakened with the abilities of abyss warlocks. During the period when the magic tide declined, this group of people had already become Leviathan Empire's strongest group of extraordinary powers. It was because he saw the great potential of this sect that Ludwig XII took on the role of the high priest of this church and became the Dark High Priest. Although he didn't believe in the existence of someone named Ada at all, he was just using the identity of the high priest of this church to control these obviously stronger knights of the church. In the past, the most outstanding mages of the Divine Era believed in the power of magic and greatly underestimated the destructive power caused by science. Now, the Emperor of Leviathan Empire also believes too much in the power of science and completely underestimates the influence brought by mystery. In reality, after experiencing true extraordinary power, all the believers gathered here are genuine fanatics and are no longer the young people he remembers who were still loyal to Leviathan Empire. Ada, the Great Will of the Abyss. Come here. Morris, who was originally a knight of the Empire, completely betrayed all the virtues of a knight and sold his soul to the Abyss in order to become an Abyss Apostle. His essence of life has been completely changed. At this moment, the 10-meter-tall Black Overlord is right behind him, but this once strongest titled machine of the Empire has completely transformed. Fierce bone spikes extend from the originally metallic armor, and the black armor is covered with traces of black particle corrosion, making it look like a monster soaked in venom from hell. No, this is indeed a monster, corrupted by the power of the Abyss, and ultimately possessing its own life. The titled machine, which once refused Morris without hesitation to become its knight, the strongest symbol of the Empire's spirit, no longer exists. The core representing the will of the Empire had long been completely contaminated by the power from the Abyss, ultimately distorted into this terrifying form. Along with that, even the strongest spear symbolizing scientific production has completely changed. Its tip is flowing with black venom, and the spiral patterns are filled with incomprehensible texts to humans. With Morris's fervent call, thousands of kilometers away, the black rune eye suspended above the primeval sea slowly turned around, staring at the center of the continent. When you stare into the Abyss also stares back at you. Morris felt the irresistible impulse that was like a first love, suffocating with eyes that were more intoxicating than any poison. Ada. Calling out the name of one of the incarnations of the Abyss's will, Morris mounted his black warhorse. The time has come. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.